Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. I was forced. Upon hearing this, Shibuya Yorishi silently shook his head and spoke. "Makatao, you may not believe it, but Urahara Kisuke must be innocent. He is not a man who can do such a bad thing. And it was not just me at the time. Urahara Kisuke was also attacked, but why did Urahara Kisuke not become a hollow, but instead traces and records of a large number of hollow experiments were found? There must be some misunderstandings, or maybe he was framed by the real person behind the scenes." Senju Makatao was surprised at Shibuya Yorishi's trust in Urahara Kisuke, but on the surface he still maintained a little resentment and disbelief, and said, "Master Yorishi, but those evidences have been investigated and confirmed by the 13th Division and the Central 46th Chamber, and it is said that when Urahara Kisuke was arrested, he did not even make an excuse, and he looked like he was completely exposed and waiting to be captured. This is a doubtful point, but it is not a big problem. I will ask him after I rescue Urahara Kisuke from the Central 46th Chamber. If he can't give me a satisfactory answer, I will kill him with my own hands." When Shibuya Yorishi said the last part, he actually showed a look of excitement and expectation. And Senju Makatao exclaimed with a shocked expression, "Master Yorishi, are you going to force your way into the Central 46th Chamber? This is an unforgivable felony. Well, there is nothing we can do about it. If we sit back and do nothing, Urahara Kisuke will also be charged with the felony of murdering the heads of the 4 great noble families. This alone is enough to slice him into pieces," Shibuya Yorishi said helplessly. "Anyway, let's rescue the people first." Senju Makatao heard this, and he looked like an innocent boy whose existing ideas were severely impacted, with an extremely tangled expression. "But, Makatao-kun, I need you to do me a favor." As Shibuya Yorishi said this, he sat directly next to Senju Makatao, and put his arm directly on Senju Makatao's shoulder, looking like a good brother. Senju Makatao's face just showed the touch of Shibuya Yorishi's trust, but his expression was extremely tangled. This. "Master Yorishi, I really can't do it. Attacking the Central 46th room is a serious crime, and I'm not good at fighting. Shibuya Yorishi looked at Senju Makatao with amusement and said, "But, how come I heard that you and Unohana Senpai stayed in the Bankai all-ending space for a long time, and finally walked out unscathed?" Senju Makatao heard this, as if he recalled something terrible. His expression immediately turned pale, and his tone was a little more fearful. "Unohana Sensei chopped me and healed me and chopped me again. What does this have to do with fighting?" "Really?" Shibuya Yorishi's rationality told her that this was the only possible answer. With Senju Makatao's spiritual pressure and age, he would never be a match for Unohana Retsu. However, Shibuya Yorishi's intuition inexplicably felt that things could never be that simple. Well, I won't tease you anymore, Makatao-kun. I'm not asking you to go with me to jailbreak, but I need you to help heal the other hollow Shinigami. That guy who backstabbed Urahara Kisuke and me, I will never let him go, just with this power he has achieved." At the end of the conversation, Shibuya Yorishi showed a rare bit of murderous intent, and a small mask belonging to the hollow slowly condensed on her face, and the terrifying spiritual pressure suddenly burst out from Shibuya Yorishi's body. "Did you master it so quickly?" Witnessing this scene, Senju Makatao couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Although in the previous treatment, Makatao Senju opened up a lot of reserved space in the spirit body for Shibuya Yorishi to allow the hollow part to integrate, greatly reducing the difficulty and conflict of autonomous hollowing. This is like a narrow and difficult passage that was originally opened up by Makatao Senju, and the difficulty of entering or passing through it is naturally much lower. However, it has only been a short time since Shibuya Yorishi woke up, and she has been able to control the hollowing autonomously so quickly. More importantly, the intensity and heaviness of Shibuya Yorishi's spiritual pressure at this moment are completely incomparable to the previous state, and it is almost visible to the naked eye. However, the next moment, under the active control of Shibuya Yorishi, the heavy spiritual pressure and the hollow mask quickly dissipated, and she said a little embarrassedly, "Makatao, I'm sorry, I still can't control my state." After a pause, Shibuya Yorishi continued, "Mr. Makatao, those hollowed Shinigami are also patients. Can you, who is so kind and gentle, really just sit back and do nothing? If we completely ignore them, even if they are not purified as hollows by the central 46th chamber, they will probably end up being hollows without self-awareness. After these words came out, Senju Makoto's expression became even more tangled, as if on one side there were rules, and on the other side there were conscience and responsibility. And Shifen Yuan Yorishi noticed Senju Makoto's state, and added fuel to the fire again, saying with a smile, "I also understand that for Makoto, this seems a bit difficult. After all, Urahara Kisuke is a bastard who has committed evil deeds no matter how you look at it. Well, how about this? If Makoto helps, then I will marry Seireitei to Makoto, how about that?" Senju Makoto: No, Master Yorishi, this is not a question of conditions and benefits, and how can you decide Seireitei's affairs without authorization? Senju Makoto quickly refused, and stated his position as a pure and kind doctor, and then said helplessly, "Master Yorishi, I believe you." Suddenly, Shifen Yuan Yorishi's eyes lit up slightly, and her favorability and trust in Senju Makoto suddenly increased. No matter what, being willing to do such a risky and illegal thing because of personal friendship, Shifen Yuan Yorishi thought it was enough to show Senju Makoto's affection and trust for her. "Makoto, you are really a good person who is worthy of trust and entrusting important things to you." Senju Makoto then added, "But I am only responsible for treating the hollow Shinigami. I don't know anything about the rest, and I don't care about it. If I am found out, I will explain to the Central 46th Office that I was forced by Master Yorishi." "No problem." Shifen Yuan Yorishi patted his chest and agreed, saying, "Then I will help you testify to the Central 46th Office that you were forced by me, and those guys in the Central 46th Office have always known that I like to force others, and they will never doubt it. Thank you for your understanding, Master Yorishi." Senju Makoto nodded with a heavy expression, and his heart was completely happy. "My recommendation: come and fight with me. I hope you can make me happy." The heroine will dearly recommend a book friend's seedling for listening, and interested book friends can also move to take a look. Chapter 152 The trial begins. Although Makoto Senju despises the behavior of being horrendous, and at the same time, when he is forced to do so, well, it smells good. Mainly because sometimes it is better to be passive than to be active, compared with Makoto Senju, who took the initiative to ask for assistance to Yorishi Shifen Yuan and participated in the rescue of Kisuke Urahara and a group of hollowed-out Shinigami. How can it be better to have a good effect when Makoto Senju makes a lot of sacrifices and risks and even owes a favor to Yorishi Shifen Yuan after many sincere requests from Yorishi Shifen Yuan? Afterwards, under Yorishi Shifen Yuan's arrangement, Makoto Senju went directly to the underground space where Yorishi Shifen Yuan trained in Flash Step in the past. Now, those hollowed-out Shinigami should have been detained in the 9th Division as the prison team. However, the captain of the 9th Division, Kensei Rokurume, and the vice-captain, Shirohei Sanmai, were both hollowed out, and the Central 46th Room could not possibly detain them back to their own division. Therefore, the Central 46th Chamber temporarily detained the hollow Shinigami in an independent area of the maggot nest of the 3rd Squadron of the Secret Mobile Team. In this way, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, the commander-in-chief of the Secret Mobile Team, was given a perfect operating space. A hand order that bypassed the Central 46th Chamber sent all the hollow Shinigami to Senju Makoto. Looking at the 3 captain level and 4 vice captain level Shinigami lying neatly on the ground in 2 rows in front of him, Senju Makoto couldn't help but reveal a bit of heat in his eyes. Captain level: Fenj Kaolujira, Hirako Makoto, Gurume Kensei. Vice captain level: Yamada Seinazuak, Konami Shiro, Saruki Hiri, Yamamara Lisa. Although Senju Makoto can accumulate a forest seed every day, after Senju Makoto realized that the spiritual power that ordinary Shinigami can absorb is negligible, he will try to choose spirits close to the level of the seed officer to sow when he sits in the clinic. Therefore, although the number of forest seeds accumulated by Senju Makoto now cannot be called over 100 million elite soldiers, it can definitely easily meet the needs of these hollowed-out Shinigami. However, out of caution, in order to prevent the surveillance and recording equipment installed by Urahara Kisuke in this underground space, Senju Makoto did not even do a little foreplay pretending to be a gentleman, but really help these hollowed-out Shinigami to treat them. Of course, compared with Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who has a very good relationship with him, Senju Makoto will naturally not treat these Shinigami too carefully. Anyway, apart from the seed transaction, it is estimated that there will not be too many other intersections between the two parties in the future. Therefore, when the hollowing has been temporarily contained by Uehara Kisuke's Hoyoku power, Senju Makutō only needs to remove and separate the hollowed parts that conflict with the spirits in the bodies of the Shinigami to complete the basic treatment. However, based on the basic respect for the hollowed-out Shinigami, Senju Makutō still deliberately separated the men and women when helping them strip off the death suits on their upper bodies. 3 captains on one side, plus the only male among the 4 vice-captains, Yamada Seinazuke. Yes, a little bit eye-catching, Senju Makutō looked at the small pile of flesh in front of him that he had casually piled together, especially Fenj Kaolujira, Pingzi Mako and Yamada Seinazuke, who all looked relatively thin and tall. Only Ngurume Kensei was a muscular man pressed on the top, which made Senju Makutō feel that the style of the painting seemed a little strange. Otherwise, let Ngurume Kensei be pressed at the bottom. Forget it, it seems that the style of painting is even stranger. Then, Senju Makutō walked to the other side that was separated, and the style of painting was obviously much more normal. Saruki Hiri, Kunichiro and Yamamara Lisa. Among them, Kunichiro is a very cute girl, and Yamamara Lisa is a typical capable and abstinent lady with a very good body proportion. As for Saruki Hiri, it's better not to mention it. I'm afraid that even if Saruki Hiri is thrown into the area of male Shinigami, there will be no violation. I'm afraid that even the holy text of Kensei Rokurume is better than Saruki Hiri. Afterwards, Makutō Senju no longer focused on those small details that could be ignored, but put on medical gloves and began to treat. This time is undoubtedly a great challenge for Makutō Senju. 157. Especially Makutō Senju has been exhausted for a whole day and night. Not to mention that he was consumed by Unohana teacher, and out of past kindness, he specially helped Shifu Yuan Yorishi's spirit to expand the space that can be virtualized. However, this is a doctor. Hardship, tiredness, and continuous busyness, these are all normal for doctors. Even though Makutō Senju's vision has been shaken to the point that large patches of white after images appear, he still forced himself to adjust the state of his own spirit through spiritual control. However, the fatigue of the spirit can be adjusted through spiritual control, but mental fatigue is a real existence. Just for the sake of the patients, to restore consciousness to the hollow Shinigami, and to satisfy Shifu and Yorishi, even if Senju Makutō felt bitter in his heart, he would never say it on the surface. Senju Makutō looked at Yamamara Lisa intently, took out the scalpel directly, and covered Yamamara Lisa with his hands, which represented green light. Then let's start with Yamamara Lisa. Just as Senju Makutō began to get busy, the trial of Uehara Kisuke in the central 46th room officially began. In a trial room with a structure similar to a stepped conference room, the entire room was almost shrouded in darkness, except for Uehara Kisuke, Walling Tess, and Arishoda Bokijin, who were tied to the center of the room to wait for the trial and were illuminated by a beam of light. The seats in the surrounding central 46th room were in a multi-layered ring, and in front of them there was a white cloth with numbers representing the sage numbers, separating them from the channel for the criminals being judged to look directly at them, so that Uehara Kisuke could not see their specific appearance. Meaning, the criminals are not qualified to look directly at the true face of the sage. However, whether it is the central 46th room or Uehara Kisuke and others standing in the center, they have no idea that there are already 2 uninvited guests in the corner of this courtroom, and they are looking down on their every move. Aiden Sasuke, Tosen Kaname. At this moment, the sages of the central 46th room gathered together, representing the solemn moment when the highest level trial meeting of the Seireitei is about to begin, but Aiden Sasuke's face could not help but have a trace of mockery and disdain. Kaname, it's a pity that you can't see, otherwise you'll find everything in front of you so ugly, Aiden Sasuke spoke slowly. Chapter 153. Undoubtedly, the ones who are shrouded in light of the sinners, while the sages who represent rules and justice hide in the darkness. They are even afraid that the sinners will remember their true appearance, so they have to separate themselves from the sight of the sinners, a group of self-deceiving, cowardly and timid mice and puppets hiding in the darkness. Their ugly appearance is really unbearable to watch, it's a pity. I originally wanted to invite Makutō to come here to see it, but Makutō seems to have some plans for Shifu Yuan Yorishi, otherwise he would definitely laugh at this scene, right? Aiden Sasuke said in a light tone, but the contempt and disdain in his eyes were almost impossible to conceal. Tosen Kaname listened quietly, but his fists couldn't help but clenched, and waves of murderous intent emerged from his body. Although the central 46th room was not the murderer who killed Tosen Kaname's cherished friend, it is undoubtedly because of this corrupt system and the highest institution of the Seireitei that justice has not been served, and the murderer is still at large. especially after learning about the hollowification incident. The Central 46 Chamber treated Shifu Yuan Yorishi, one of the 4 great nobles, specially, and planned to directly purify and eliminate the other hollowed Shinigami. This undoubtedly once again deeply exposed the scars deep in Tosen Kaname's heart, making Tosen Kaname wish to draw his sword and kill all the so-called sages in front of him on the spot. Don't be impatient, Kaname. Aiden Sasuke felt Tosen Kaname's emotional fluctuations and spoke slowly. The so-called Central 46 Chambers are just puppets controlled by the upper nobles in the final analysis. Even if you kill the group of puppets in front of you, it will have no meaning. As long as the upper nobles of the Seireitei have a stable position and power, you can replace the other puppets at any time to form a new Central 46 Chambers. Tosen Kaname nodded slowly and responded. Yes, Lord Aizen, I understand. I firmly believe that Lord Aizen's path ahead will definitely wipe out all those so-called nobles. Aiden Sasuke smiled slightly when he heard this, and his eyes fell on Uehara Kisuke, who was in the center of the courtroom. Facing the inquiries of the sages of the Central 46 rooms around them, Uehara Kisuke, Gorites and Arashoda Bokuchin have been trying to defend themselves. However, under the effect of Aizen Sasuke's zanpakutō Suigetsu, the so-called defense and evidence of Uehara Kisuke and others were completely silent in the eyes of the Central 46 rooms. Of course, in fact, even if Aizen Sasuke did not interfere, in the eyes of the Central 46 rooms, this trial was just a process, and the trial results that had been discussed in advance were imposed on Uehara Kisuke. After all, big things are held in small meetings, and small things are held in large meetings is an unchanging law. For an incident like this involving more than half of the captain-level Shinigami of the Seireitei and seriously harming the head of the Shibuin family, one of the 4 great nobles, the Central 46 Chamber had already received instructions in advance on what kind of verdict to make. The so-called trial process is just to give that result legitimacy in terms of procedures and rules. The Great Ghost Master of the Ghost Path, Tesakujira, and the Deputy Ghost Master, Bokuchin Arashoda, are suspected of assisting Uehara Kisuke in conducting evil experiments and using forbidden space ghost techniques without permission. They are sentenced to deprivation of their status, deprivation of their spiritual power, and exile to the living world. Uehara Kisuke, the captain of the 12th Division, privately conducted evil hollowization research experiments, murdered more than a few captains and other Shinigami, and harmed the head of the Shibuin family, Yorishi Shibuin. In view of his evil behavior, he is sentenced to public death by double execution to warn the Soul Society. As soon as these words came out, the faces of Uehara Kisuke, Tesakujira, and Bokuchin Arashoda, who were tied up in the center of the trial room, changed. In addition, execute immediately. However, at this moment, the door of the courtroom was suddenly blasted open, and a nimble figure covered in a black cloak rushed in, interrupting the judge's voice. Who? How dare you break into the solemn courtroom without permission? Where are the guards? Where are the guards? Hurry up and take down this lunatic. For a moment, almost the entire courtroom was in chaos with the appearance of that figure, and the sages shouted in panic. His attitude was very disqualified. However, facing the questioning and shouting of the Central 46th room, the nimble figure did not hesitate at all, and landed directly next to Uehara Kisuke, whiling Tess and Arashoda Bokuchin, and cut off the restraints with a swing of the short blade in his hand. Go. The voice of Shifu Yuan Yorishi sounded under the black cloak, which made Uehara Kisuke react quickly, and followed whiling Tess, Arashoda Bokuchin and Shifu Yuan Yorishi and rushed out directly. As Yorishi Shirin and the others completely disappeared in the courtroom, the Central 46th Chamber, which had lost its composure, was almost in a state of confusion. A lunatic who has not challenged the dignity of the Central 46th Chamber in hundreds of years. Contact Captain General Yamamoto immediately, and arrest this lunatic. Wait, I just seemed to see the symbol of the Shibuin family on that cloak. Could it be Master Yorishi? As soon as these words came out, the Central 46th Chamber almost fell into a dead silence, and there was a feeling in their hearts. Why did your Majesty rebel? Aiden Sasuke witnessed this scene, and his sarcastic expression was almost overflowing with words. What a bunch of clowns. Let's go, we have to. Yes, Master Aizen. On the other side, Senju Cheng sensed that the forest seed planted in Yorishi Shirin began to move towards him at a high speed, and the speed could not help but increase a few points. At least, the treatment of the 3 female Shinigami must be completed before that. Finally, Makoto Senju finished the job at a very fast speed, and successfully put on the death suits of the 3 female Shinigami before Yorishi Shifu Yuan arrived, and then prepared to start treating the other 4 male Shinigami. However, Makoto Senju overestimated his ability to continue fighting. After completing the treatment of Litamaru Meira, Haikukanami, and Hiri Saruka, he felt dizzy when he stood up. In addition, Makoto Senju subconsciously crossed the distance with a flash step, which caused Makoto Senju to trip over his left foot and fall directly on the small meat mountain with inertia due to his uncoordinated feet. When Yorishi Shifen Yuan and others entered this underground space, what they saw was that Makoto Senju was playing a new kind of dagger with 4 topless Shinigami, and the whole person was completely pressed on them. Kisuke Uehara, Yorishi Shifen Yuan, Teswaling, and Bukiji Narishoda. Chapter 154 The first person to respect teachers. Subconsciously, Uehara Kisuke, Gorites and Narishoda Bukijin cast their eyes on Shifen Yuan Yorishi, as if asking Shifen Yuan Yorishi, "You hurriedly took us away from the central 46th room just to let us see this?" Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who witnessed this scene, also felt a bit like a myocardial infarction. This scene, even Shifen Yuan Yorishi, a wild cat with an extremely bold and outrageous style, felt that it seemed a bit too bold and outrageous. The next moment, Shifen Yuan Yorishi appeared beside Senju Makoto and asked unhappily, "Makoto, what are you doing? I risked sending people to you. What am I doing secretly?" Senju Makoto patted his head, which was still dizzy, and looked at Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who was almost doubled in front of him, and didn't understand his situation at all, and said, "Master Yorishi, why did you come back so soon?" Shifen Yuan Yorishi crossed his arms, looked at Senju Makoto's state that seemed to be exhausted, and asked back, "What else?" "Wait a little longer, give you 1 more minute." Senju Makoto shook his head and answered subconsciously, "1 minute, that's definitely not possible." Shifen Yuan Yorishi, "Then how long do you want to finish?" Shifen Yuan Yorishi asked with a strange expression. Senju Makoto pinched his eyebrows, trying to ease his mental state as much as possible, and answered, "Be conservative, at least 1 hour for each person." Shifen Yuan Yorishi heard this, as if he heard something that tickled the heart of this wild cat, and couldn't help asking, "1 hour? Is this still conservative? So strong? Of course, there is no way to be faster, especially since my current condition is not very good," Senju Makoto said while looking at Yamamara Lisa and others who were lying neatly on the ground on the other side. "I just finished the treatment of Vice Captain Yamamara and others, so it does take so long." After a pause, Senju Makoto continued to answer, "It's just that I didn't expect Master Yorishi to come back so soon, so I need some time to complete the treatment of all the hollow Shinigami." Wait, you mean treatment? Yorishi Shimen asked. "What else?" Makoto Senju straightened his crooked glasses and asked in confusion. Yorishi Shimen's face turned red, and she said with a little more embarrassment in her voice, "Oh no, I thought it was also treatment." "Really?" Makoto Senju heard that and felt that something seemed to be wrong. Just when he was about to put his hand on the ground and stand up, the feeling didn't feel right. The next moment, Makoto Senju realized something and almost instantly jumped up from Kensei Mei's body. However, before Makoto Senju could speak, Uehara Kisuke, who was following behind Yorishi Shimen, asked in shock, "Mr. Makoto, do you mean that you have completely cured Vice Captain Yamamara and the others of their hollowification?" Senju Makoto recalled his seemingly inappropriate posture just now, and his mouth twitched slightly. He almost chose not to mention this matter without hesitation, and turned to look at Uehara Kisuke and answered, "It's not considered a cure. Hollowification is based on the changes in the soul. The cure I mentioned is only for the problem of the spirit. I carefully studied the changes in hollowification. I don't know why, but the erosion of the spirit by hollowification seems to have been curbed. But it is based on this that I can treat the hollowed Shinigami." Uehara Kisuke was shocked and asked, "Mr. Makoto, can you explain the principle in detail? This is very important to me." Senju Makoto's brows seemed to frown slightly, as if he still had some grudge against Uehara Kisuke, but after looking at Shifen Yuan Yorishi, he seemed to force himself to endure it. This series of small changes in expression almost perfectly fell into the eyes of Shifen Yuan Yorishi, and Shifen Yuan Yorishi could not help but feel gratitude, guilt and trust for Senju Makoto. In the final analysis, Uehara Kisuke was just a close friend of Shifen Yuan Yorishi, but in the eyes of Senju Makoto, he was an enemy. Although Shifen Yuan Yorishi knew that there must be some misunderstanding, Senju Makoto was undoubtedly because of Shifen Yuan Yorishi's existence, so he resisted the urge to attack. For a moment, Shifu Yorishi could not help but feel that her care for Senju Makoto was far less than the trust and kindness that Senju Makoto had given this time. Unohana Senpei's vision is really amazing. Obviously, I only have a small favor of teaching Shunpo, but Makoto-kun has achieved this point because of it. When it comes to respecting teachers, Makoto-kun is definitely the first in Soul Society. Inexplicably, Shifu Yorishi even felt a little envious of Unohana Retsu, who could actually receive such a disciple. After Senju Makoto finished the behavior that his character should do, he rubbed his brows and answered. The reason why the hollow Shinigami still have signs of hollow and cannot wake up is actually not complicated. It is because they completely lost control in the hollow state before, which caused the degree of hollow in their spirits to be too serious. It's like a machine with a strict structure mixed with a lot of impurities, and this impurity has reached the level of affecting the normal operation of the machine, which is why the hollow Shinigami cannot wake up and regain consciousness. I have verified this on Master Yorishi. If I am not wrong, Vice Captain Yamamura and the others who have completed the treatment should also wake up soon. Yorishi Shifu, who was standing by, heard this and spoke directly. Yes, I can prove the truth of what Makoto said. I was able to regain consciousness before thanks to Makoto. When Yorishi Shifu said this, his eyes fell on the four male Shinigami who had their shirts taken off. His voice suddenly stopped, as if he realized something. However, Urahara Kisuke, who had not thought of this at all, looked excited. I see, I always thought that my treatment of them had failed, but I didn't expect that the reason why they still maintained their hollow masks and were in a coma was because of this. Then, Urahara Kisuke noticed that Senju Makoto was almost exhausted, and said, Makoto, thank you for your hard work. Leave it to me. I will immediately make an instrument that can distinguish the spirit particles of Shinigami and hollows, and then remove all the spirit particles of hollows from them. Senju Makoto. However, how could Senju Makoto let Urahara Kisuke take his job? Although it was tiring, this involved sowing seeds. Let me do it. Only those who are proficient in medicine can tell which parts of the spirit body structure will be seriously hollowed out. Mr. Makoto, you underestimate me. When I was studying at the Mao Spiritual Academy, I was also a genius with full marks in the way of reincarnation. But Captain Urahara will be wanted by the Central 46th Chamber soon, right? The sooner you leave the Seireitei, the better it will be for you. Captain Urahara is wasting too much time, Senju Makoto paused and then suggested. How about this, Captain Urahara will be responsible for the spirit of the captain of the 6th team first, and leave the rest to me. Chapter 155 My beloved Vice Captain Yamada. In the end, Makoto Senju said, as a doctor, I will never give up any patient easily. He completely convinced Kisuke Urahara. After all, what Makoto Senju said was not wrong. In any case, Kisuke Urahara's escape from the Central 46th Chamber this time has completely confirmed the crime. If he continues to stay in the Soul Society, he will inevitably be hunted down by all parties. Therefore, he must leave the Soul Society as soon as possible, and the sooner the better. Perhaps the Central 46th Chamber will be afraid of the existence of Shifu Yorishi, but once Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni personally takes action, he will not show mercy in order to maintain the rules and order of the Soul Society. In this case, if these hollowed-out Shinigami can regain consciousness, it will be much easier for Kisuke Urahara and his party to leave the Seireitei. Although Makoto Senju's current state looks extremely bad, as he starts treatment again, the only thing left on Makoto Senju's face is concentration and seriousness. Whether it was Urahara Kisuke, or Wallen Tessenda Ashoda Bokichin, they had to admit that Senju Makoto's performance in Kido and medical skills was pure and admirable, and they were also grateful. Although, Senju Makoto's attitude towards Urahara Kisuke was a little unkind, this behavior of forcing himself to treat the hollow Shinigami was undoubtedly helping them escape from Soul Society from another perspective. Makoto, I will remember this favor. Urahara Kisuke was moved, and he also began to disassemble the various parts of the instruments that Shifu Yorishi brought from the secret room of the captain's room of the 12th Division, and then demonstrated the unique skill of rubbing the instruments with his hands that made Senju Makoto dumbfounded. When Senju Makoto finished the treatment of Fenj Kaoru and secretly integrated the seed of the forest, he looked up inadvertently and found that Urahara Kisuke was controlling a temporary suture product instrument and operating it on Road Guru Mei Kensei. The screen of the instrument clearly displayed the distribution of the hollowed-out parts of Kensei Rokuguru Mei's spirit body, and then operated 6 tentacle-like mechanical arms to remove the hollowed-out parts of Kensei Rokuguru Mei. This scene full of disharmony and weirdness not only made Senju Cheng feel a little uncomfortable, but also Shifu Yuan Orishi, Walling Tess and Arishoda Bokuchan beside him all had expressions of sweat on their foreheads and swallowing saliva. Especially, the temporary stitched instrument seemed to be stuck and smoked from time to time, and Kensei Rokugurume also made unconscious screams, groans and wails from time to time. Occasionally, the not-so-sensitive instrument would tear off part of Kensei Rokugurume's original spirit body with blood dripping. In response, Uehara Kisuke fully utilized his full Makuadale level of the Mao Spiritual Academy, quickly stopped the bleeding for Kensei Rokugurume, and separated the hollowed-out parts again. During the whole process, Uehara Kisuke did not forget to take out a notebook and record something, with an expression of sudden enlightenment on his face from time to time. This is execution. Witnessing this scene, Senju Cheng's exhausted spirit could not help but tremble, and he actually felt sorry for Gurume Kensei. At this moment, Senju Cheng vaguely understood why in the original trajectory, almost all the Shinigami were extremely resistant to being treated by the next captain of the 12th Division, Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Even Uehara Kisuke's suitability for treating others was so horrible. In comparison, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was even less concerned about the so-called moral ethics and patient experience. It was undoubtedly an absolute torture. In the eyes of these so-called scientists, anyone lying on their instruments may have subconsciously regarded them as experimental materials. And just as Senju Cheng was stunned for a few breaths, Gurume Kensei watched the blood stain the instrument. In response, Uehara Kisuke took out a needle from his arms, and then stabbed Gurume Kensei's butt with the needle, and continued to separate the hollow part as if nothing had happened. This is definitely the greatest torture for the patient. It is immoral, unreasonable, and wrong, Captain Mikama. Please be patient for a while. I will go to rescue you immediately after I finish treating the other patients. Makoto Senju soothed the conscience of a doctor in his heart, and once again forced himself to treat the remaining two, Makoto Hirako and Senju Yamada. Among them, Makoto Senju spared no effort in treating his beloved vice captain Senju Yamada. He even felt sad when he thought that Senju Yamada would wander in the world from now on. If he hadn't changed the trajectory by his own actions, Senju Yamada would not have suffered so much, but would have been transferred from the position of vice captain of the 4th Division to the general representative of Mao Shiyakuin. P.S. Mao Shiyakuin is, in a sense, a private hospital for the nobility. For this reason, Makoto Senju was particularly attentive in treating Senju Yamada. However, the mental fatigue seemed to have reached its limit, causing Senju Makoto's vision to continue to have residual images and blur. Therefore, under the influence of force majeure, Senju Makoto accidentally cut a little harder, and from time to time he cut off a little more unnecessary things. Then, realizing that his condition was not right, Senju Makoto did not dare to use the Kido to treat Yamada Senju again, for fear that there would be some mistakes in his eyes, so he deliberately only helped Yamada Senju suture the injury. After all, Yamada Senju himself was a very outstanding and excellent doctor, and Senju Makoto believed that he could treat himself after he woke up. However, when Senju Makoto's blurred vision recovered for a moment, he was shocked to find that he had sutured the wrong place and actually sewed up Yamada Senju's mouth. Vice Captain Yamada, I'm sorry. Finally, Senju Makoto could no longer hold on and fainted directly from fatigue. It was a pity that he was unable to completely complete the treatment for Yamada Senju. But it's okay, Vice Captain Yamada. The seed of connection between you and me has already been integrated, and Captain Uehara has already understood how to treat it. It just needs a little more suffering. Please be patient. When Senju Makoto woke up again, he found himself back in the tent that the 4th Division had temporarily built. At this moment, the curtain of the tent was lifted, and Yokiriza shouted in surprise. Makoto-kun, no, Vice Captain Senju, you finally woke up. Riza? Why am I here? Senju Makoto rubbed his temple, which was still numb, and asked. It was the secret mobile team that sent Makoto-kun back, and Vice Captain Senju, you have been in a coma for a whole day and night. Yokiriza replied, while taking out a letter from her arms and handing it to Senju Makoto, saying. By the way, this letter was also sent back. Senju Makoto took the letter and read it while recalling what happened before he fainted. Makoto-kun, we have left, maybe we will meet again in the future. Also, please take good care of Yushiro. After all, you don't want me to tell Unohana-senpai about the bad things you did to me and Vice Captain Yamura, right? Chapter 156 Tenderness. Seeing the last part, there was a pattern similar to a cat on the letter, and Senju Makoto's face could not help but darken slightly. This is how the damn world that repays a favor. I exhausted my energy and fell into a coma for you. Besides, how could I, a man, be afraid of such a threat? Not to mention that the relationship between me and Unohana-sensei would be so easily provoked. However, Yushiro is quite cute, and I will take care of him a little purely out of my own will. Senju Makoto thought secretly, and did not forget to check the envelope to confirm that it had not been opened by others, and then without hesitation, he directly released the Hado 11. Lightning with a broken chant, turning the letter into ashes. However, Urahara Kisuke and Shiffen Yuan Yorishi and his party left the Seireitei smoothly, which was undoubtedly a good thing for Senju Makoto. Regardless of whether this is also the plan of Asian Sasuke, for Makoto Senju, Kisuke Urahara and Yorishi Shirin are undoubtedly important combat forces that can be used. As for why Makoto Senju has not told Kisuke Urahara and Yorishi Shirin more secrets, in addition to the fact that the trust between the two sides has not reached that level, what is more important is that Makoto Senju can't produce any substantial evidence at all. Even, according to common sense, if Makoto Senju does or says something that is not in line with his status, position, and ability, it will appear more suspicious. More importantly, Makoto Senju's ability is far from enough. Asian Sasuke needs time to completely complete the collapsed jade and hollowification experiment, and Makoto Senju also needs time to accumulate his own strength. And with the integration of the Seed of Forest into the hollowed Shinigami, Makoto Senju feels that his spiritual power absorption speed has almost increased sharply. It's a pity that Ikawaru was directly killed by Unohana-retsu, which makes Makoto Senju feel heartbroken. Like Ikawaru, he had also made contributions to the Seireitei, shed blood, and was also a captain who could sow and absorb a lot of spiritual power. Unfortunately, Ikawaru was a little unlucky, and happened to be the first to face Unohana-retsu, who had suppressed his killing intent for thousands of years. But perhaps it was precisely because of killing Ikawaru that Unohana-retsu was slightly satisfied in the burst of killing desire, and gradually regained some rationality. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the rest of the Hollow Shinigami and Senju Makoto would have been chopped clean by Unohana-retsu. And next, is undoubtedly the real reshuffle moment for the entire GOTY 13th Division, the captain positions of the 2nd Division, 3rd Division, 5th Division, 7th Division, 9th Division, 10th Division, and 12th Division are all vacant, and a large number of adjutants and chief officers are also missing, if you count it this way. Almost more than half of the captain positions in the GOTY 13th Division are vacant. Senju Makoto thought silently, and even had an impulse to take the opportunity to fight for a captain position. After all, in such a situation where the combat power is seriously lacking and has even affected the operation of the GOTY 13 Division, the assessment and requirements for the captain will inevitably be greatly reduced. However, the next moment, Senju Makoto dispelled this meaningless thought. After personally feeling the attitude of the Central 46th Division this time, Senju Makoto knew that the captain might have a very high status and power in the Seireitei. However, for the Central 46th Division, the captain is still just a tool and consumable to maintain stability. In contrast, it is far from hiding under the wings of Unohana-retsu to continue to accumulate strength, and compared with other divisions, Senju Makoto prefers the 4th Division. However, even if you don't fight for the position of captain, you can take the opportunity to insert people into the GOTY 13. What Senju Makoto was thinking, Aokiriza on the side was a little stunned. In the past, Senju Makoto gave people the feeling of being as gentle as the spring breeze. At this moment, Senju Makoto had just slept for a day and a night. He looked a little unkempt and decadent, but his eyes were shining with a certain light, which made people yearn for him. Senju Makoto felt the increasingly obvious gaze from Aokiriza, and suddenly reacted, stretched out his hand and waved it in front of Aokiriza. Aokiriza suddenly woke up and apologized repeatedly. Yes, I'm sorry, Vice Captain Senju. Senju Makoto seemed to show a bit of anger on his face, looking directly at Aokiriza and said, Riza, what are you talking about? Aokiriza heard this and became more and more flustered inexplicably. Shouldn't you call me Makoto-kun? Senju Makoto said seriously. Aokiriza was stunned, staring blankly at Senju Makoto, who had a gentle smile on his face again, and suddenly felt her eyes hot, and her heart was also blocked. Makoto-kun hasn't changed. Although he was promoted from an ordinary soldier to vice captain overnight, he is still Makoto-kun. He hasn't changed. Seeing the change in Aoki Riza's expression, Senju Cheng quickly stood up and asked with concern. Riza? Are you thinking about the Aoki 5 seat again? How about you take a rest first? Aoki Riza took a deep breath, shook her head, and answered firmly. No, Cheng-kun, no matter what, I must shoulder my mother's wish to support the Aoki family. Besides, the team is short of manpower now, so it's definitely not the time to rest. Senju Cheng patted Aoki Riza's shoulder with some emotion in his heart, and then spoke. Riza, when Unohana-sensei comes back, I will propose to Unohana-sensei that you take over the position of the 5-seat officer. Aoki Riza's tearful eyes widened, and she waved her hands repeatedly and said, No, Cheng, how can I let you do this, and my ability is also a little bit insufficient. How could it be? Riza, you are also a genius, Senju Cheng looked at Aoki Riza and said seriously and gently. Besides, it is not against the rules for me to do this. It is the responsibility of the vice-captain to recommend outstanding talents in the team to the captain to serve as the seat officer, and I have always felt that Riza is quite outstanding. I. For a moment, Aoki Riza was completely moved. Especially when Aoki Riza still remembers that when she was young, after her father passed away, many nobles despised and laughed at the Aoki family. Many of her peers even openly laughed at the Aoki family, saying that they might be deprived of their noble status at any time. However, now facing the Aoki family that has lost its most important support, Kyoko Aoki, Cheng not only does not dislike them at all, but is so gentle and caring. Don't think too much. Work hard, waste less time on those meaningless associations, and spend more time on your Deo and medical skills. After a pause, Senju Cheng continued. If you encounter any doubts, you can come to me during your rest time at night, and I will give you some lessons. Chapter 157. Taiguchi's brave voice. In the final analysis, Senju Cheng is a person who knows how to be grateful. In the past, Kyoko Aoki often helped Senju Cheng solve his doubts. Now that Kyoko Aoki accidentally died in the hollowification incident, Senju Cheng may not be able to avenge Kyoko Aoki. But, out of morality and gratitude, Senju Cheng believes that he has the responsibility to take good care of Aoki Riza. More importantly, Senju Cheng is now promoted to the vice-captain of the 4th Division. Although Yamada-sana's yoke was not popular in the 4th Division, it is necessary to support an obedient officer. Of course, Senju Cheng has no intention of sidelining Unohana Retsu, just to make it more convenient for Unohana teacher to do things. And Aoki Riza, in Senju Cheng's view, she is undoubtedly a very trustworthy candidate and worth spending some energy. Then, Senju Cheng asked Aoki Riza about the changes in the situation in the 4th Division during the coma, and after making some arrangements and instructions, he tidied up his clothes and appearance and walked out of the tent. At this moment, the vice-captain's armband that originally belonged to Yamada-sana's yoke has also been delivered. And according to the rules of the Seireitei, just as the captains need to wear the captain's aori, the vice-captains also have the rule that they need to wear the vice-captain's armband at all times. There is no doubt that this is a symbol of honor and status, representing the existence of the 13 captains in the GOTY 13 division. In fact, the class and status division within the GOTY 13 division is extremely obvious and strict. It is precisely because of this that whether it is the gentleness deliberately disguised by Aizen Sosok or the gentleness from the heart of Senju Cheng, they have gained a lot of pursuit and admiration. And as Senju Cheng, wearing the vice-captain's armband, walked in the tent area temporarily built by the 4th Division, he clearly felt that many of the eyes that showed kindness and longing in the past had a little more awe. In this regard, Senju Cheng is still the same as in the past. Whether it is treating the soldiers of the 4th Division or the patients, his face always shows the gentleness of the spring breeze, and he nods from time to time. There is no doubt that this move once again earned Senju a wave of admiration and respect within the 4th Division. Soon, Senju arrived at the destination of his trip, which was the small tent where Yamada-sana's yoke's wife, Rinka Yamada, lived. Now, with most of the 4th Division's barracks turned into ruins, the team members who originally lived in the 4th Division can only live in temporary tents. The purpose of Senju's trip is naturally to meet the widow of Yamada-sana's yoke. Oh? That's not right, the beloved Vice-Captain Yamada is not dead yet, so she is not a widow for the time being, and Rinka Yamada is not a widow. And although Senju has often suffered from Yamada-sana's yoke's overt or covert poisonous treatment since joining the 4th Division, Yamada-sana's yoke's treatment of Senju is not at all caring. However, the two sides are familiar with each other, and Senju Makoto has now replaced Yamada Seinazuak. Whether for public or private reasons, it is still necessary to visit Yamada Rinka. However, at this moment, when he arrived at the door, Senju Makoto was still a little hesitant. Because in order to eliminate the impact of the hollowification incident, the Central 46th Chamber has publicly announced the death of all the hollowed-out Shinigami, which means, Yamada Rinka is already a widow in name. However, Senju Makoto is very clear that Yamada Seinazuak, who has no place in the Seireitei because of the hollowification, has actually fled to the real world with Uehara Kisuke and Shibuya Yorishi. At this time, a figure almost as tall as Senju Makoto appeared beside Senju Makoto, and asked with a little more surprise and shock. "Are you Vice Captain Senju?" Senju Makoto turned his head and saw that this was a slender and tall type that is extremely rare among women, with a slightly messy silver-grey short hair, and a look of restraint and respect on the face that still showed deep fatigue. Senju Makoto recalled for a moment, and soon remembered the name of the person in front of him, and asked, "Goro Tetsuin?" Upon hearing this, Yun's eyes flashed with deep surprise. He had never expected that Senju Makoto would remember his name. In fact, Senju Makoto did have some impression of Yun. In addition to the memory of his previous life, more importantly, Yun graduated in the same class as Senju Makoto and joined the 4th Division. Moreover, with Yun's height, which is rare among women, and her unique silver-grey hair, people also have a deep impression of her. "I remember Yun, you should be in the funeral home, right?" Senju Makoto asked. Yun nodded and answered humbly and politely. "Yes, Vice Captain Senju, but because the team is short of manpower now, all the personnel in the funeral home have been transferred to assist the other seniors in their work." After listening to Yun's answer, Senju Makoto recalled that he had made this arrangement, but at the time, Senju Makoto had subconsciously forgotten that Yun was also in the funeral home. Suddenly, Makoto Senju recalled that Yamada Seinazuak's wife, Rinka Yamada, was also a member of the 4th Division, and she was responsible for the daily affairs of the funeral home. Makoto Senju glanced at the flowers that Kotetsuin carefully held in his hands and asked, "Are you here to visit Rinka Yamada?" "Yes, Vice Captain Senju. Vice Captain Yamada's matter is very regrettable, so I came here specially to visit Rinka-sama." After a pause, Kotetsuin thought of something and explained hurriedly in a panic. "Vice Captain Senju, but I have definitely completed the tasks assigned by my seniors, and it has not affected the affairs of the team at all." Seeing this, Makoto Senju felt a little bit of contrast to the timid character of Kotetsuin, who was obviously tall and slender, and said with a gentle smile on his face, "How can I blame you? It just so happens that I am here to visit Rinka Yamada, but I am hesitant that it is not appropriate for me to enter Rinka Yamada's tent alone, so I would like to trouble you to accompany me for a while, okay?" "Of course." Kotetsuin replied excitedly. "Thank you." Senju Makoto said gently, making Kotetsuin feel like a ray of sunshine on his body, and the fatigue of being busy for 2 days also dissipated a lot. "No, you're welcome, Vice Captain Senju." Kotetsuin replied politely, and then took the initiative to ask Rinka Yamada in the tent, and walked into the tent with Senju Makoto. The next moment, Rinka Yamada, who looked gentle and quiet, appeared in front of Senju Makoto wearing black clothes unique to widows. But Rinka Yamada looked quite haggard and sad, and there was a feeling of pity. Chapter 158 Vice Captain's Residence. Before, Makoto Senju had learned from Yamada Seinazuak that he had a wife, but for some reason, Yamada Seinazuak had never invited Makoto Senju to his house. In addition, Makoto Senju had never stayed in a funeral home like Kotetsuin, so this was the first time Makoto Senju had seen Rinka Yamada. In terms of appearance, Rinka Yamada was not extremely beautiful, but she had an extremely outstanding temperament, quiet, gentle, mature, charming, haggard and pitiful. In addition, she was dressed as a widow, and her eyes were slightly red and swollen, which made Makoto Senju's expression unconsciously more solemn. "Mrs. Yamada." Makoto Senju took the initiative to salute Rinka Yamada, and Rinka Yamada also hurriedly invited Makoto Senju and Kotetsuin to sit down and serve them tea. "This place is simple, please don't dislike it, Vice Captain Senju," Rinka Yamada said with her eyes slightly lowered. "Ah," Senju Makoto sighed slightly, and there was no doubt that he felt a little more guilty. After all, it was his appearance that forced Captain Yamada Seinazuak to flee the Seireitei in a hurry, so that Yamada Rinka misunderstood that Yamada Seinazuak was dead after being notified by the Central 46th room. This made Senju Makoto feel the urge to take extra care of Yamada Rinka to make up for the guilt in his heart. "Mrs. Yamada, please don't be so polite. Since I joined the team, I have been taken care of by Vice Captain Yamada many times. I have secretly vowed to take revenge, to repay Vice Captain Yamada's care. Senju Cheng, who almost slipped up, quickly corrected himself and then answered. Now, Vice Captain Yamada has unfortunately suffered a disaster and died gloriously for the Seireitei. I believe he doesn't want to see Mrs. Yamada so sad. Yamada Rinka listened to Senju Cheng's caring words, and her drooping and lifeless eyes seemed to have a little more light, and a little more gratitude to Senju Cheng. In fact, Rinka Yamada is very clear about her husband's popularity in the 4th Division. Perhaps Yamada-san has not done anything bad, but his poisonous character has offended almost everyone. It is for this reason that Rinka Yamada, who was originally good at Kido and medical skills, deliberately served as the head of the rather despised funeral home in the team, just to save a little reputation and popularity for Yamada-san's Yuuk. From Yamada-san's Yuuk's mouth, Rinka Yamada has heard a lot about Senju Cheng's deeds. It is for this reason that Rinka Yamada is very clear that what Yamada-san's Yuuk has for Senju Cheng is more of a feeling of envy and jealousy. Therefore, Rinka Yamada is very clear that Yamada-san's Yuuk will never take care of Senju Cheng many times. This is undoubtedly an excuse and goodwill of Senju Cheng. Vice Captain Senju, thank you very much for your concern. I'm fine. Rinka Yamada responded gratefully. Mrs. Yamada, please don't be so polite. Just call me Vice Captain Yamada. Senju Cheng said gently. Then, Yamada Rinka hesitated for a moment, feeling Senju Cheng's sincere gaze, nodded and replied. Mr. Cheng, then I'm sorry for being so presumptuous. After that, the relationship between the two sides gradually became closer with this title, and Senju Cheng also cared about Yamada Rinka from the perspective of a junior. When she learned that the mansion of Vice Captain Yamada-san's Yuuk, who was originally assigned to the 4th Division and served as the vice captain in the past, had collapsed, according to the regulations, Yamada Rinka could only move into the ordinary living area in the future like ordinary team members. Senju Cheng frowned slightly, as if hesitating about something, and then spoke. Mrs. Yamada, let's do this. When the new squad house is renovated, you can move into the vice captain's residence assigned to me. As soon as these words came out, Kotetsuin, who was listening to the audience, was stunned. Yamada Rinka's originally sad and haggard expression suddenly became ruddy, and she said with a little more anger. Mr. Cheng, what do you mean by this? Senju Cheng saw Mrs. Yamada's reaction and reacted instantly. He waved his hands and said. No, Mrs. Yamada misunderstood. I mean to give that residence to Mrs. Yamada to live in. For a moment, as Senju Cheng said this, the scene was almost silent. Whether it was Kotetsuin or Yamada Rinka, they were completely stunned when they looked at Senju Cheng. They didn't expect that Senju Cheng would actually do this for the wife of the former vice captain. You know, as the vice captain of the GOTY 13, the residence assigned to him, not to mention that it represents a symbol of status, can show a clear status cap with ordinary team members, and its value is also quite expensive. However, Senju, who had just become the vice captain, actually gave up the mansion that was about to be allocated to him. This is undoubtedly unheard of. At least, in the history of the GOTY 13, even though some vice captains would take care of the families of the former vice captains who died, no one has ever done it to this extent. At this moment, the admiration and longing in Totsuyu's eyes when he looked at Senju almost completely overflowed. And the 10 fingers hidden in the sleeves of Yamada Rinka also subconsciously pinched the corners of the clothes, and the eyes that were already slightly red and swollen were faintly filled with tears again. Even Yamada Rinka inexplicably felt a strong sense of shame and guilt. Senju, Kun, what a gentle, pure, noble and great person he is. In the past, I had never dissuaded Yamada-san's Yuuk from being jealous of Cheng. When Cheng came to visit, I even suspected that Cheng had some bad intentions. When Cheng asked me to live in the vice captain's house, I even had those shameful and vulgar speculations. This is a taint and slander of Cheng. Compared with Cheng, both Yamada-san's Yuuk and myself are too mean and selfish. Then, Yamada Rinka bent down and performed a solemn etiquette towards Senju Cheng to show her gratitude, and then said, I appreciate Cheng's kindness, but now I am no longer the vice captain's wife. How can I be qualified to live in that house? No, you are still the vice captain's wife. Senju Cheng said righteously. However, although Yamada-Rinka knew that the gentle and noble Senju Makoto did not mean that, after listening to these ambiguous words, the fingers hidden in her sleeves at a loss could not help but pinch the corner of her clothes. Although Vice Captain Yamada is no longer in the Seireitei, Mrs. Yamada's status will never change, Senju Makoto said gently. And there is not much I can do. The only way I can repay Vice Captain Yamada's kindness is to give Mrs. Yamada a warm and comfortable home, so please feel free to live in it, Mrs. Yamada. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 159. I'm fine with whatever I want. Hearing Senju Makoto's tone that seemed to not allow rejection, Yamada-Rinka, who was originally unwilling to accept this gift, inexplicably did not have the intention to refuse, and asked instead. But in this case, where should Makoto lie? Senju Makoto smiled brightly and answered in a relaxed tone. I'll just go with whatever I want. In fact, Senju Makoto had already thought of his own residence, which was undoubtedly in Unohana-Retsu's courtyard. It is impossible to separate from his Unohana teacher. The relationship between himself and Unohana teacher has finally shown a little progress. At this time, Senju Makoto will really be grateful if this seedling is transplanted to another place. So when discussing the renovation of the 4th Division's barracks with Omida Kiyoshi, Senju Makoto had already had the idea of slightly modifying the structure at Unohana-Retsu's courtyard and adding a room for himself. In this way, since Senju Makoto no longer needs to live in a guest room in the courtyard as in the past, the distance between him and Unohana-Retsu can be slightly closer. It just so happens that while Unohana-sensei is not in the 4th Division, Makoto Senju plans to cook the rice before it's cooked and build the courtyard first. With Unohana-sensei's gentle and dark personality, she may be dissatisfied, but she will definitely not forcibly demolish and rebuild. The appearance of Rinka Yamada just solved the problem of the vice captain's residence being vacant for Makoto Senju, and the reason why Makoto Senju was forced to move into Unohana-Retsu's courtyard. Moreover, Makoto Senju can also take the opportunity to gain an excellent reputation. For Makoto Senju now, reputation in the Seireitei is often much more important than status. As long as the reputation is high enough, even the Central 46th Chamber needs to pay special attention to the opinions and reactions from the nobles when facing matters related to Makoto Senju. As for ordinary vice captains or captains, it is obvious that for the Central 46th Chamber, they are just tools to maintain rule and ensure stability. However, in the eyes of Rinka Yamada and Yuin Kotetsu, Makoto Senju's answer is more like Makoto Senju planning to live in the ordinary team member area. Makoto-kun is just pretending to be relaxed. Maybe Makoto is just a boy, but what is hidden under the appearance of that innocent boy is really gentleness. At this moment, both Yamada-Rinka and Kotetsu were completely moved. Makoto, how about you also live in the vice captain's house? When Yamada-Rinka said this, her face was almost rosy, and there was no trace of the pitiful and haggard look when Senju Makoto just came in. Even after Yamada-Rinka said this, she felt a burst of heat and discomfort all over her body. After all, Yamada-Rinka was a person who had just lost her husband. At this sensitive moment, it was undoubtedly very easy to cause misunderstandings to live in the same house with other men by default. However, Yamada-Rinka still said this. First, Yamada-Rinka felt guilty about Senju Makoto and did not want to see Senju Makoto sacrifice like this. Second, Yamada-Rinka also believed in Senju Makoto's noble and pure character. However, as she expected, the gentle Makoto Senju rejected Yamada-Rinka's proposal without hesitation, as if he was worried that it would bring unnecessary trouble to Yamada-Rinka. At this moment, Yamada-Rinka trusted Makoto Senju so much that even if Makoto Senju barged in when Yamada-Rinka was taking a bath in the future, Yamada-Rinka would believe that it was definitely a misunderstanding. Makoto-kun, didn't you mean to watch? Then Makoto Yamada, I'll take my leave first. For now, I'll have to let Makoto stay here. When the vice captain's residence is renovated, Makoto Yamada can move in. As Makoto Senju said goodbye, Yamada-Rinka stood up and personally sent Makoto Senju to the door of the tent, her eyes full of emotion. Makoto-kun, wait. Just as Makoto Senju was about to turn around and leave, Yamada-Rinka suddenly called Makoto Senju. Makoto Senju paused and asked without any impatience. Mrs. Yamada, do you have any other requests? I will do my best to satisfy them. Yamada-Rinka shook her head and said. I am so grateful for everything that Makoto has done for me that I don't know how to repay him. How dare I make any excessive requests? After a pause, Yamada Rinka turned to look at Kotetsuya, who was standing next to her, and said, Makoto, I know that the team is short of manpower now, so I want to recommend Kotetsuya to you. Although Kotetsuya is not as good as Makoto, he is also the person with the highest talent in Udayu and medical skills that I have seen in the funeral home over the years. Senju once personally considered Yun and thought that Yun's ability and talent were quite high. He had the idea of training Yun so that he could take over his duties as vice captain in the future to assist Captain Yunahana. Kotetsuya, who was standing aside, was shocked when he heard this and waved his hands repeatedly. Senior Inca, please don't make such jokes. How can Yun be compared with Vice Captain Senju? No, I'm serious. In addition to her outstanding talents, Yun is also very meticulous and cautious. In fact, in recent months, most of the affairs of the funeral home have been handled by Yun, and she has handled them in an orderly manner, which shows how capable Yun is. Yamada Rinka smiled at Kotetsuya and said seriously. Of course, after Makoto-kun appeared like a bright star and showed his extraordinary talents, Senju also understood that the future vice captain of the 4th Division should belong to Makoto-kun, but he didn't expect that day to come so soon. However, Yun is indeed quite outstanding. Although she has only studied in the funeral home for nearly a year, she is probably comparable to a slightly inferior officer and should be able to provide considerable help to Makoto-kun. Senju Makoto nodded after hearing this, and turned his gentle eyes to look in the direction of Kotetsuya. Kotetsuya met Senju Makoto's gaze, and his timid nature made him lower his head subconsciously, looking very nervous, and he felt his heartbeat speeding up. Just as Kotetsuya was getting more and more nervous, Senju Makoto stepped in front of Kotetsuya, and a palm appeared in front of Kotetsuya. The next moment, Senju Makoto's gentle and humble voice reached Kotetsuya's ears. Yonin, please give me more guidance in the future. Kotetsuya felt his brain go blank, and then an uncontrollable joy rose in his heart. That joy was not only because he had left the funeral home early and his status had skyrocketed, but more importantly, he was able to follow this Senju deputy captain. Kotetsuya's heart was warmed, and he quickly held Senju Makoto's palms with both hands, and answered loudly and excitedly. Please give me more guidance. Chapter 160. Gloomy Yamada Senju in the present world. In a dilapidated and leaky abandoned steel factory, Shifen Yuan Yorishi and Urehara Kisuke and his party all gathered here. After Senju Makoto fell into a coma, Urehara Kisuke completed the treatment of Ngurume Kensei and quickly removed the hollowed part of Yamada Senju. Afterwards, after awakening all the hollowed Shinigami as soon as possible, Urehara Kisuke and Shifen Yuan Yorishi brought all the hollowed Shinigami and the 2 ghost priests through the Shifen Yuan family's gate to the present world. After that, it was a day and a night of various concealment of traces and changing routes to avoid being noticed by the Soul Society. Therefore, Shifen Yuan Yorishi and Urehara Kisuke and his party had just settled down, but almost everyone looked tired and hungry. Among them, Sarakaka Hisari, who was particularly irritable and bad-tempered and was Urehara Kisuke's vice captain, questioned Urehara Kisuke with almost complete dissatisfaction on his face. Damn it, Urehara Kisuke, are we going to hide here forever? Urehara Kisuke looked up at the transparent barrier that was maintained by Korites and Arashoda Bokuchin in turn, surrounding the entire dilapidated factory, and answered patiently. Everyone may need to be patient for a while. Before I can develop a new type of artificial body that can perfectly block the leakage of spiritual pressure, our overly strong spiritual pressure will not only have a great impression on the existence of the real world, but will also directly expose our location to the Soul Society. Then why don't you hurry up? What are you doing sitting here like an idiot? Sarakazuhiri shouted unhappily. Urehara Kisuke waved his hands helplessly and said, It's just that I don't have any materials now. I have to wait for Yorishi to send the necessary materials and instruments to me through the channels of the Shiwuin family. Road Guru Meikensei, who was wrapped in bandages all over his body, stood up at this time and asked with a very angry expression. Let's not worry about the new type of artificial body that blocks spiritual pressure. Captain Urehara should explain what hollowification is right now. Fenge Kaolujura, who was no longer as elegant as a Western nobleman in the past, asked with sharp eyes. Indeed, Captain Urehara, we were forced to follow you to escape to the real world not long after we woke up. We don't know the specific situation yet. We can't hide some necessary information, right? Urehara Kisuke felt the change in the atmosphere. Even Wallen and Ashoda cast inquiring eyes, and they also understood that this was undoubtedly a crisis of trust. There is no doubt that everything came too suddenly, and there was not even a trace of sign. Then, Urahara Kisuke did not hide anything, and even revealed the fact that he had the Horyoku in his hand. Hirako Mako, who was in a state of thinking the whole time, heard this and frowned while asking. You mean, besides you, there is probably someone else in the Seireitei who possesses the Horyoku that can induce holoification? Urahara Kisuke, are you sure it's not your Horyoku? However, before Hirako Mako could finish, Sara Kakehire directly kicked Hirako Mako away with a flying kick, and defended her with a grin. You bastard bald guy, are you doubting Urahara Kisuke? Although Kisuke's behavior is despicable, he saved our lives. It was definitely not Kisuke who did it. Hirako Mako said angrily, covering one side of his face that was red and swollen. Bastard Hiri, I told you not to call me bald, and it's not that we don't believe in Urahara Kisuke, otherwise how could we follow Urahara Kisuke to escape to the human world? After a pause, Hirako Mako's expression became serious and he spoke. But I do have a suspect. Who? The expressions of the Shinigami present were all grim. Hirako Mako spoke word by word. My vice captain isn't Sasuke. However, no matter how these Shinigami who used to stand at the top of Soul Society speculated, there was undoubtedly no direct evidence to truly point out that Aizen Sasuke was the mastermind behind the scenes. But one thing is certain. They have no place to stay in Soul Society after being hollowed out. Staying in the real world to wait for the opportunity and accumulate strength is undoubtedly the only choice. And Yamada Seinezuke, whose mouth has not yet been unstitched, listened to the discussion of the other Shinigami and felt that he was about to suffocate because he couldn't speak. At this moment, listening to the long-term lurking plan that the other Shinigami began to prepare, his eyes added a hint of gloom and sadness. Yamada Rinka, is she crying and sad for herself, feeling sad? But I can't go back to her at this moment, and it may even take decades or even hundreds of years before I can go back to Soul Society. When I thought that Yamada Rinka might be crying and sad alone at this moment, Yamada Seinezuke could already imagine the heart-wrenching feeling in Yamada Rinka's heart. On the other hand, when Makoto Senju said goodbye to Rinka Yamada for the last time, he looked at her ruddy face and bright eyes, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. No matter what, maybe Yamada Seinezuke is not dead yet, but he is almost dead. In this case, it is undoubtedly a good thing that Yamada Rinka can no longer grieve about this matter. I, Makoto Senju, have saved a sad person again. For that kind-hearted Dr. Senju, this almost subconsciously produced a sense of satisfaction, and Makoto Senju also harvested a Tora Tetsuyun by the way. There is almost no falsehood in Yamada Rinka's evaluation of Tora Tetsuyun. In the original trajectory, Tora Tetsuyun replaced Yamada Seinezuke as the vice captain of the 4th Division, and was even promoted to the captain of the 4th Division later, which shows Tora Tetsuyun's outstanding talents in Kido and medical skills. Therefore, when he met Ko Tetsuyun by chance this time, Senju Makoto originally planned to find an excuse to transfer Ko Tetsuyun to his side and slowly train Ko Tetsuyun as one of the future team members. Unexpectedly, Yamada Rinka finally came with such a perfect assist. Thank you, Vice Captain Yamada Seinezuke, your wife is really great, excellent and virtuous, but Senju Makoto is a man after all. Even if he wants to take care of Yamada Rinka more, he needs to be wary of related rumors. Thinking of this, Senju Makoto looked at Ko Tetsuyun who was following behind him and said, Yuin, if you have time, visit Mrs. Yamada more often. Yes, I will. Ko Tetsuyun quickly responded. If there is any man approaching Mrs. Yamada and intends to pursue Mrs. Yamada, speaking of this, Senju Makoto paused and realized that it seemed that he didn't need to care so much. Ko Tetsuyun asked. Then bring a blessing for me, Senju Makoto said with a gentle smile. Ko Tetsuyun. Chapter 161 The whole thread. Afterwards, Senju Makoto took Ko Tetsuyun to briefly inspect the tent area of the 4th Division and the conditions of each patient. If you are not in the position, do not interfere in other people's affairs. Now that he has served as the vice captain of the 4th Division, and Unohana Retsu is not in the division, Senju Makoto will naturally not turn a blind eye to the situation in the team. However, the Gotti 13th Division is a militarized organization after all. Even if some rules are too rigid and corrupt, the basic abilities and qualities of each Shinigami are also there. Therefore, after Senju Makoto's inspection, in addition to many unavoidable problems due to supplies, environment, venues, etc., The 4th Division, despite the shortage of manpower, still did not have any major mistakes. The appearance of Senju Cheng, the new vice-captain of the 4th Division, also slightly lifted the spirits of many members of the 4th Division. However, Senju Cheng also clearly noticed a problem, that is, because more than half of the officers in the 4th Division were sacrificed, a considerable number of members fell into a state of no management. It's okay in the short term, but it will inevitably lead to various problems in the long run. Afterwards, Senju Cheng returned to his tent, wrote down all the urgent problems that needed to be solved, and then looked at Kotetsuin on the side and said, "Yuin, although Mrs. Yamada admires you very much, in order to more accurately grasp the depth of your ability, do you mind if I evaluate you?" "Yes, I will definitely do my best and will not let you down, Vice Captain Senju." Kotetsuin's spirit was shocked, and he was a little timid, but he seemed to have to muster up the courage to respond, but the whole person seemed to be tense. "Don't be so nervous, just some simple questions." Then Senju Cheng directly asked Kotetsuin some of the questions that Unohana Retsu had used to evaluate him, from shallow to deep, from rough to various details. After a simple question and answer, Senju Cheng couldn't help but feel a little surprised. At least, Kotetsuin's theoretical level is quite good, completely exceeding the level that should be mastered at the funeral home stage. Even some of the 4th squad officers who were ranked lower may not be as good as Kotetsuin. Before, Vice Captain Yamada and Mrs. Yamada would occasionally teach me. Kotetsuin took the initiative to explain. "Yuin, you are much better than I thought, very good." Under Senju Cheng's generous praise, Kotetsuin seemed to be a little shy and lowered his head. As for Kotetsuin's current position, Senju Cheng probably has a conclusion. The theoretical level is quite good, but he still lacks experience in practice. Next, Senju Cheng only needs to personally train Kotetsuin for a period of time, and Kotetsuin will soon become a capable member of the 4th team. However, now that Kotetsuin only has a lot of theoretical knowledge, it is more suitable to play a role similar to secretary and temporarily assist himself in handling the tedious affairs of the team. Of course, this is definitely not that Senju Cheng wants to be lazy, but just to give Kotetsuin a little more opportunity to exercise himself. And when Kotetsuin's desk was filled with a bunch of tedious team affairs, Kotetsuin was asked to try to approve the opinions. Kotetsuin's expression can be described as both touching and terrified. "Vice Captain Senju, I don't know anything yet. What if I make a mistake?" Senju Cheng said with encouragement and a gentle smile on his face. "Don't worry, don't be afraid. No matter who you are, you have grown up step by step from not understanding and making mistakes. So it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. I will review everything later." At this moment, Kotetsuin felt a surge of blood flowing from the bottom of his heart. This feeling of being valued, cared for, and entrusted with an important task almost made Kotetsuin subconsciously feel the urge to die for Senju Cheng and offer everything. It's like, you were a temporary security guard of a large group a few days ago, and suddenly you were valued by the group's boss, and you were directly promoted to secretary, and all the affairs of the entire group, big and small, were handed over to you to handle and control. Even, he didn't mind that you would make mistakes at all, and said that he would cover for you. All this, for Kotetsuin, who had been with many sacrificed seniors in the funeral home for nearly a year, was so dreamy that he could hardly believe that it was real. At least, a few days ago, Kotetsuin would not dare to dream like this even in the middle of the night. Kotetsuin's face flushed, and he answered excitedly. "Vice Captain Senju, I will definitely do my best." "Come on." Senju Cheng made a small fist gesture to Kotetsuin, which made Kotetsuin completely like chicken blood, and began to frantically bury his head in dealing with various tedious team affairs that had been squeezed for several days. For example, a certain department is short of treatment gloves, and requests to allocate 1,000 treatment gloves. A certain patient's symptoms are too complicated to make an accurate diagnosis and treatment, and requests the assistance of the chief officer. A certain department has insufficient beds, and requests permission to increase temporary beds, and so on. After Senju Cheng glanced at them, he found that they were all extremely tedious, but not very important team affairs. However, this is also something that must be coordinated and allocated within the squad. Especially after many officers sacrificed, some of the team affairs that could have been handled by their own officers could only be brought to Senju Cheng. And it is obvious that Kotetsuin has never had a big cake in his life. Senju Cheng's push directly squeezed out Kotetsuin's chicken blood, and Kotetsuin's subjective initiative was directly pulled to the maximum. Of course, Senju Cheng did not intend to be a completely hands-off boss. After Kotetsuin approved these team affairs, Senju Makoto would still review and confirm them all. But compared to Kotetsuin, it is obvious that Senju Makoto only needs to put a or in the future, or maybe make a slight correction. Senju Makoto will be countless times easier, and he can also fully grasp the situation of the entire 4th squad. And Senju Makoto patiently pointed out the opinions on the team affairs for a while, and slightly calmed Kotetsuin's somewhat panicked and excited heart. Afterwards, Makoto Senju left Kotetsuin alone to work in the tent, and he went to the tent where Omida Kichiyo lived. Now that Omida Kichiyo has promised to be responsible for the renovation of the entire 4th Division barracks, Makoto Senju feels that he should always repay the Omida family a little. Makoto Senju is going to perform the next minor operation on Omida Kichiyo himself. Even if Omida Kichiyo has any special requirements, Makoto Senju can make an exception and fully meet Omida Kichiyo's requirements. For example, the whole thread. Chapter 162. This will be convenient for Cheng-ge. When Makoto Senju walked to the tent near Omida Kichiyo, he smelled a breath of local tyrants before he entered the tent. It was the smell of money. The next moment, the curtain of the tent was pulled open, and a golden Omida Kishin appeared in front of Makoto Senju. Before, perhaps because he had to face Shifen Yuan Yorishi and Shifen Yuan Yushiro in the Shifen Yuan courtyard, Omida Kishin's clothes and accessories were restrained. However, at this moment, Omida Kishin in front of Makoto Senju almost completely blinded his eyes. A big gold chain as thick as 2 fingers hung around his neck, and all kinds of jade rings were worn on his 10 fingers. Even the frame of the pair of sunglasses on his nose was made of pure gold. It can be said that Omida Kishin's body was almost everywhere that could be inlaid with gold and jade, and Omida Kishin didn't waste it at all. Although this is very vulgar, after Omida Nozomi promised to repair the 4th Division's barracks, Senju Makoto felt that this was undoubtedly the holy light that best suited Omida Nozomi. And when Omida Nozomi looked at Senju Makoto's appearance, a smile was completely on his face. "Hey, Vice Captain Senju, why did you come here in person? Vice Captain Omida is the one. Why didn't you tell me when you arrived at the 4th Division so that I could prepare for the reception? How dare I bother Vice Captain Senju? I just came here to visit that idiot Kyo. Vice Captain Omida, this is your fault. The young master is obviously a rare talent, a person who has the potential to be a vice captain. The Omida family has a promising future, and even further progress is not impossible. Ha ha ha, Vice Captain Senju, you are too flattering. In the future, the Omida family will need Vice Captain Senju to support and take care of them. For a while, the atmosphere between Makoto Senju and Kiyoshi Omida was extremely harmonious. All kinds of compliments came out of their mouths, and both sides felt that they admit too late. Finally, just when Makoto Senju felt that he was almost praised to the point that he could marry the captain immediately, step into the status of a great noble in Seoul society, and leave a reputation that would not be easily forgotten in the Seireitei. After all, Omida Nozomi did not forget the main business and spoke. Mr. Makoto, the relevant repairs can be officially started tomorrow, and the preliminary estimated construction period will be completed within half a month. Senju Makoto was overjoyed when he heard this. He did not expect that Omida Nozomi's efficiency was so high. He completed the mobilization of so many resources in just one day, which was enough to show how many resources Omida Nozomi had. Then I will trouble Vice Captain Omida. Most of the areas of the team house can be repaired according to the original site. For the areas that need to be modified, I will complete the architectural concept map as soon as possible tonight and hand it over to Vice Captain Omida. No problem, even if there are any places that need large-scale modifications during the period, Vice Captain Senju can always propose it, and I will definitely make Vice Captain Senju and Captain Unahana completely satisfied. Omida Nozomi said that he took on a lot of responsibilities, especially at the end. He seemed to intentionally or unintentionally put Senju Makoto's name before Unahana Retsu, which implicitly pointed out that everything should be given priority to Senju Makoto's wishes. Thank you, Vice Captain Omida. Senju Makoto said gratefully. This time, Kikuyo was able to survive under the ruins of the 4th Division, thanks to Makoto-kun. This is a real favor to the Omida family. Omida Kikuyo expressed his gratitude sincerely. Of course, what could make Omida Kikuyo so respectful and humble was definitely not just a favor. In fact, the reason why Omida Kikuyo was so respectful to Senju Makoto was not only because of the relationship between Senju Makoto and Shirin Yushiro, but more importantly, Shirin Yorishi's message. Treat Senju Makoto with courtesy, and try to satisfy your help Senju Makoto as much as possible. The message was simple, but the amount of information was huge. Although the Omida family's wealth was one of the most powerful nobles in the entire Soul Society, there was an irrefutable fact that the Omida family depended on the Shiuin family. So for Omida Kikyo, Shiuin Yorishi's order had to be completed no matter what. Therefore, this time, rather than visiting Omida Kikyo, Omida Kiyoshi came to stay with Senju Makoto, so as to get closer to Senju Makoto. After all, if Makoto becomes a member of the Shiuin Yuan family in the future, today's little investment will be recovered thousands of times. In the following days, despite the help of Kotetsu, Senju Makoto was still busy with the various team affairs of the 4th Division. In addition to leaving his own traces in the 4th Division little by little and inheriting the remaining influence of Yamada Seina's Uik, Senju Makoto also needs to pay attention to the repair of the 4th Division's dormitory. Especially in the Unohana Garden, Senju Makoto can be said to pay attention to every detail as much as possible. In addition, Senju Makoto also did not forget to visit Unohana Retsu, who was temporarily residing in the central 46th room regularly. Facing Unohana Retsu, the unprecedented big villain in Soul Society 1,000 years ago, the attitude of the central 46th room can be said to be extremely cautious. They were afraid of Unohana Retsu, and were extremely worried about whether Unohana Retsu's condition was stable or not. Therefore, the central 46th room tried to restrict Unohana Retsu as much as possible to confirm Unohana Retsu's condition. On the other hand, they also treated Unohana Retsu as well as they could. Therefore, the only person that made Makoto Senju a little worried was Iho Shiko. That night, Makoto Senju finally broke his promise and didn't have time to go to Iho Shiko's most important moment in life. I'm afraid that not only himself, but also Yorishi Shiuin didn't show up. This, maybe for Iho Shiko, it was undoubtedly an extremely heavy blow. Then, Yorishi Shiuin quietly left Seireitei in a way that was almost equivalent to abandoning Iho Shiko. Makoto Senju had also been paying attention to Iho Shiko's condition through the rain and dew pomegranates during this period of time, but Iho Shiko seemed to be deliberately avoiding Makoto Senju, and frantically carrying out one task after another in the second team under the name of Seihu. It was as if, in this way, he could completely numb his heart. Although Makoto Senju has a very good relationship with Omida Nozomi, he naturally understands that it is a taboo to ask about the internal affairs of other squads, especially for a very special squad like the second squad and the secret mobile team. However, after Makoto Senju showed concern intentionally or unintentionally, Nozomi Omida patted his chest and said, "I see, Makoto-kun, wait a minute, I will modify Seireitei's mission immediately and let her go to Makoto-kun's tent tonight." Makoto Senju. Nozomi Omida paused for a long time before continuing. "God, so that if Makoto-kun wants to communicate with Seireitei, it will be convenient. P.S. I don't know if it's just a cold or a sheep, I'm not feeling well tonight, so there are only 2 updates, and I will try to make up for the one I owe tomorrow. That's all." Chapter 163. Broken Beer arrives. As Omida Nozomi left, Senju Makoto was still a little confused. Obviously, that statement seemed normal, but there was something wrong with Omida Nozomi's arrangement. However, this made Senju Makoto, who was originally in the tent browsing the team affairs, a little absent-minded. That feeling was a bit strange, and more importantly, Senju Makoto didn't know Omida Nozomi would arrange Seireitei to guard his tent. Just as Senju Makoto was thinking, his eyes accidentally glanced at Kotetsu, who was sitting in a corner of the tent with a small table in front of him full of various team documents, and then said, "Yuin, let's stop here today." Kotetsu paused, and asked with some confusion and fear, "Vice Captain Senju, did I make a mistake?" "No, I just saw that you have been busy all this time, so I want you to go back early today and have a good rest." Senju Makoto pushed his glasses and said in a warm voice. Kotetsu breathed a sigh of relief and said with full energy, "It's okay, Vice Captain Senju, I can still do it." After spending some time together, Kotetsu was no longer as nervous and timid towards Senju Makoto as before. However, after feeling that Senju Makoto was also a very gentle and considerate person in daily life, Kotetsu's admiration for Senju Makoto was even greater. "I know you are very capable, Yongin, and I have seen how busy you have been during this period. It's just that some things are too much, and only after a short rest can you work harder, understand?" Senju Makoto said as he closed the team affairs file in front of Kotetsu with a bit of domineering that he didn't usually have, and said without allowing any refusal, "Now, Yongin, go back and rest for me. Before 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, you are not allowed to come over again, and you are not allowed to think about any team affairs." Go and relax, understand? For some reason, Kotetsuin looked at Senju Makoto, who was so close in front of him, and felt his heartbeat speed up, and he felt a kind of care. Why, it seems that I can't refuse Vice Captain Senju at all. It turns out that Vice Captain Senju always has me in his eyes. That's right. I can't let Vice Captain Senju down. I should summarize my progress and gains during this period of time, and then I can help Vice Captain Senju better. With this feeling, Kotetsuin left Senju Makoto's tent excitedly. And Senju Makoto also breathed a sigh of relief. The troublesome finally left. After all, Senju Makoto planned to have a good conversation with Seireitei and confirm Seireitei's condition, so it would be quite inconvenient for Kotetsuin to be present. Then, Senju Makoto continued to handle team affairs alone. Now, the entire 4th Division has gradually returned to a certain degree of normality. Although the problem of lack of manpower is still serious, it will not fall into chaos, and various medical supplies have been provided. Because the Shinigami injured in the hollowification incident have either recovered and left, or have joined the funeral home to settle down and wait for demolition. At this tense and chaotic moment for the 4th Division, Makoto Senju personally led the 4th Division to restore order and normality, which also rapidly increased Makoto Senju's prestige within the 4th Division. Unlike before, it was not completely dependent on the status of Captain Unohana's disciple, but it was indeed based on the prestige gained by Makoto Senju's own ability and charm. Maybe, Makoto Senju paused in handling the team, and recalled the time when he went to the central 46th room to visit Unohana Retsu. Unohana Retsu always had a calm, gentle and elegant demeanor. Makoto Senju suddenly realized that this might also be Unohana Retsu's original intention. Unohana Retsu was not anxious to leave the confinement of the central 46th room in order to train Makoto Senju's ability in this area under the protection of Unohana Retsu. Unohana teacher is always like this. Under her gentle appearance, she can be dark and scary, but she always cares for me, takes care of me, and cultivates me in a subtle way. Thinking of this, Senju Makoto's heart couldn't help but warm up, as if a warm current was slowly flowing through his heart. Perhaps, it was for this reason that although Senju Makoto and Unohana Retsu had been together for about a year, he completely regarded Unohana Retsu as an important person in his heart. As for the look of being obsessed with fighting like an evil ghost, isn't it quite cute? Recalling Unohana Retsu's posture, Senju Makoto couldn't help licking his lips, and felt that his heart was aroused by an unparalleled desire to conquer. But it was a pity that Senju Makoto knew very well that he was still far from being able to fight with Unohana Retsu completely and wantonly, and stab the zanpakutō representing each other's souls into each other's bodies. TSK, there is no point in being anxious now. I think that after that night, Unohana-sensei will understand my feelings. Wait for me. Unohana-sensei. Sooner or later, you and I will be able to satisfy each other. Now, the most important thing is to manage the 4th Division entrusted to you by Unohana-sensei. However, Senju Makoto still finds it difficult to solve the problem of the 4th Division's shortage of manpower, especially during the hollowification incident. The loss of captain level and chief level Shinigami of the GOTY 13 Division was too great. With the normal training cycle of high-end combat power in Soul Society, the GOTY 13 Division may not be able to recover without more than 10 or 20 years. In this case, the Shinigami of the GOTY 13 Division will be short of high-end combat power when performing missions, and the death and injury rate will increase significantly, and the medical pressure will also increase. At least, in the past half-month, Senju Makoto has clearly noticed the emergence of this trend. The frequency of the rescue team's dispatch is getting higher and higher, and the number of Shinigami sent to the 4th Division for emergency treatment has also increased significantly. Fortunately, Makoto Senju's zanpakutō Sinrawansai has an outstanding auxiliary treatment effect for external injuries. Makoto Senju can almost heal all the injured Shinigami sent to the 4th Division at a level close to Unohana Retsu, otherwise the pressure on the 4th Division will be further increased. Just as Makoto Senju is gradually thinking about various solutions to alleviate the shortage of manpower, he sensed that Seireitei's forest seed was approaching rapidly. Then, Seireitei stopped at a corner outside the tent and stopped completely, as if she had no intention of coming in. Chapter 164. Sincerity of Sorrow. What surprised Makoto Senju was that Seireitei's concealment technique learned from the secret mobile team seemed to have made great progress. If it weren't for the existence of the forest seed, Makoto Senju would not have noticed Seireitei's existence. Seireitei, is she hiding from me? Makoto Senju continued to handle team affairs calmly, thinking about related things in his heart. Outside the tent, the whole person was completely covered by the special black clothes of the secret mobile team. Seireitei seemed to have completely merged into the night, and the fluctuation of spiritual pressure was also suppressed to the lowest level. During this period, several members of the 4th Division walked by less than 1 meter away from Seireitei, but they did not notice Seireitei's existence at all. However, Seireitei's eyes looked at the vague shadow of vacant Senju reflected on the tent, and her seemingly cold eyes were touched from time to time. Enter the tent to protect the safety of vacant Senju, the vice-captain of the 4th Division. The mission time limit: 1 night. This is the emergency mission notice received by Seireitei. However, when Seireitei arrived here and realized that she was the only member of the secret mobile team, she realized that this might be arranged by vacant Senju. Otherwise, according to the style of the secret mobile team, normal missions would be coordinated by multiple people in order to confirm the success rate of the mission and deal with various unexpected risks. Vacant Senju, is there anything you want to say to me? Realizing this, Seireitei rarely violated the requirements of the mission and just stayed outside the tent. Time passed little by little. Vacant Senju in the tent seemed to be completely unaware of Seireitei's appearance. He approved all the team affairs that needed to be handled that day, and then stood up and moved around in the tent. I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional. Vacant Senju walked to the side of the tent close to Seireitei. At this moment, Vacant Senju and Seireitei were only separated by a tent. Seireitei could clearly see every detail of vacant Senju's shadow on the tent, and even heard his soft sigh. The sigh, full of worry and helplessness, was like a spring breeze wrapped in sorrow blowing through Seireitei's heart. Koya, you still haven't forgiven me. You won't even give me a chance to apologize? Senju Makatao muttered to himself, his word full of regret and helplessness. For a moment, Seireitei, who was originally outside the tent and felt an inexplicable wave of fluctuations in her heart and wanted to change her position, stopped involuntarily. Makatao, don't you know I've arrived? Seireitei had become different from the past, as if her cold eyes were surging. Although Seireitei had instinctively refused everyone to get close to her, but Seireitei couldn't help but want to listen to Senju Makatao's voice at this moment. Kosei, for that very important day for you, I have prepared many blessings for you and gifts for you. I really want to witness the moment when you bear the name of Saifeng, and as an important friend, let you know that you are not alone. Alas, even after asking Vice Captain Nomida for help at great expense, I still can't get a chance to talk to you. When he said this, Senju Makatao's shadow reached out and wiped the corner of his eyes, as if wiping tears. Senju Makatao's voice also became more sad and lonely, and his words revealed a kind of loneliness, and he laughed at himself sadly. TSK, after all, I was abandoned. I really didn't even have a chance to explain to Kosei. These words slowly reached Seireitei's ears, but they completely broke through Seireitei's seemingly hard psychological defense, causing Seireitei's eyes to unconsciously overflow from the wet mask. That kind of sadness, that kind of despair, that kind of loneliness, deeply resonated with Seireitei. Originally, Seireitei cherished Yorishi Shuin so much, and regarded Yorishi Shuin as the person she admired and would devote everything to. However, after the hollowification incident happened, Yorishi Shuin actually left without saying a word, as if she completely ignored Seireitei's existence. Even if I wanted to escape from Soul Society, I could take my own, whether it was in the real world or Huko Mundo, I could abandon everything and follow Yorishi-sama. After learning this result, Seireitei felt that her entire heart was hollowed out, and there was nothing left. The faith that she had held for countless years collapsed completely. Then, Seireitei, who was in despair about everything, almost cut off all contact with the outside world, and frantically carried out one mission after another, trying to numb herself in this way. It doesn't matter if I die in a mission at any time. And inside the tent, Makatao Senju, who had been waiting for a few breaths, felt that Seireitei's position had not moved at all, which made Makatao Senju frown slightly. Is there no other way? Did Seireitei at this time completely refuse to listen to anything after Yorishi Shuin left? Thinking of this, Makatao Senju couldn't help but feel helpless. As a friend, Makatao Senju didn't want Seireitei to be immersed in this false sadness and despair. However, without Yorishi Shuin's permission, and considering the huge cooperation between him and Yorishi Shuin, Makatao Senju was not suitable to tell Seireitei the truth on his own. More importantly, once Seireitei knew what happened between Makatao Senju and Yorishi Shuin, it was possible that Seireitei's mentality, who was obsessed with Yorishi Shuin, would completely explode. Why? Obviously, I should be the person that Yorishi-sama trusted the most. Why did Yorishi-sama actually believe Makoto-kun in such a matter and didn't choose to tell me? Could it be that my position in Yorishi-sama's heart has been replaced by Makoto-kun? Just by association, Makoto Senju guessed the scene of the relevant conversation. If you put yourself in her shoes, this is probably similar to the night when Makoto Senju was shocked to find that Unohana-sensei actually asked Totetsuya to sleep with her instead of choosing to let himself sleep with her. How could he tolerate this? At the very least, I have to be included in the conversation. Therefore, Makoto Senju concealed the matter between him and Yorishi-shiuin, entirely for Seireitei's sake, fearing that Seireitei's future Bankai might be distorted into a self-destructive one-hit kill. In that case, let's all end it together, hoo-hoo. At this moment, Seireitei's position finally moved, and she appeared directly at the entrance of the tent, followed by Seireitei's familiar voice. Makoto Senju, Vice Captain of the 4th Division, I'm here to protect you as ordered. Chapter 165 Dame. Koya. The next moment, the curtain in front of Seireitei was pulled open, and Senju Makoto's face, which showed surprise, appeared in front of Seireitei. Seireitei subconsciously lowered her head slightly, moving away from the gaze between herself and Senju Makoto, and was shocked to find that Senju Makoto's wooden shoes were actually worn backwards. This undoubtedly shows Seireitei's status in Senju Makoto's heart, and even when Senju Makoto heard her voice, he was so excited that he even ran out with his wooden shoes worn backwards. And, Seireitei looked up at Senju Makoto again, and found that Senju Makoto still didn't notice it at all. On that gentle and elegant face, there was only excitement and joy of reunion. For a moment, Seireitei felt a huge wave of emotion completely surged into her heart, and the tears that Seireitei had just stopped burst out again. It turns out, there is Makoto who regards me as such an important person, not someone who can be abandoned or ignored at will. Seeing this, Senju Makoto was also anxious and nervous and showed concern. What's wrong? Koya, come on, come in first. No, go into the tent. Okay, it's okay. Tell me slowly if you have anything to say. It's okay, even if you don't want to talk now. It doesn't matter. I will always be here. Whenever you want to talk, I will listen patiently. In the gentle comfort of Senju Makoto, Seireitei seemed to want to use this method to exclude all the pressure and loneliness she had endured during this period. And in front of Senju Makoto, Seireitei was completely without the previous arrogance, but without the slightest bit of defense, and completely regarded Senju Makoto as the most trustworthy and close person. For a while, Seireitei cried so hard that it was like a pear blossom with rain, which made Senju Makoto feel a little heartbroken. But, it seems to be understandable. After all, what Seireitei lost overnight was the meaning of living for which she struggled, worked hard, and vowed to give everything. No matter who faces such a change, they will almost feel that their faith has collapsed. Makoto Senju patted Seireitei's back with one hand, and leaned his shoulder to Seireitei, gently comforting her. At this moment, Makoto Senju inexplicably had an illusion. Could Seireitei have regarded him as a male version of Yorishi-shiuin, and completely regarded him as a spiritual sustenance? After all, before this, Seireitei, who had a proud personality, would never show such an attitude in front of Makoto Senju. Even though Seireitei often acted defenseless in the past, this time the proud Seireitei did not even maintain a bit of face. Unknowingly, Seireitei's crying gradually faded, and she actually fell asleep while crying, and completely collapsed on Makoto Senju. Makoto Senju could even feel every flat rib on Seireitei's body clearly. Really? Makoto Senju said helplessly, but he also understood that perhaps for Seireitei, this time a good vent was what she needed most. His purpose for the night was also perfectly achieved. It's just that, Seireitei, you are too defenseless, aren't you? It's a good thing that you met a pure boy like me. Senju Makoto grumbled helplessly, stretched out his hand to pick up Seireitei, who had a slender waist and a light body, and prepared to put her on the bed in the tent so that Seireitei could have a good night's rest. However, at this moment, the curtain of the tent was suddenly pulled open, and Yokiriza's voice, which seemed to be mixed with a bit of joy, followed. Makoto, I heard that Yuin will go back early tonight. The next moment, Yokiriza saw Senju Makoto's appearance at this time, holding a girl in his arms and walking towards the bed. Yokiriza. Almost in an instant, Yokiriza's face was completely red and smoking, and the CPU was completely blocked by a large amount of pornographic backed information. Yes, sorry to bother you. Instinctively, Aokiriza's body reacted before her brain did, and she instantly shrank out of the tent, leaving behind a confused Senju Makoto. Then, Senju Makoto looked at Seireitei in his arms with tears in his eyes, knowing that he had definitely been misunderstood. The 4th Division's barracks must be repaired faster. The tent, there's no way to lock the door. I really didn't think of doing anything to Seireitei. Besides, with Seireitei's body and age, if something really happened, she would feel guilty and go to jail. If this matter gets to Unohana-sensei's ears, I would really rather go to jail. Aokiriza instinctively shrank out of the tent, and a gust of night wind blew by, which slightly cooled down Aokiriza's overloaded CPU. Wait, the next moment, Aokiriza recalled the body and profile of the girl that Senju Makoto had just held in his arms. Cosway. Aya. It was that damned woman. How could she be allowed to succeed? Then, Aokiriza suddenly rushed into the tent again and shouted. Da-me. Makoto-kun, this is absolutely da-me. Almost in an instant, Aokiriza rushed in front of Senju Makoto, staring at Seireitei lying in Senju Makoto's arms. After a thorough investigation, sure enough, it was that bad, flat, arrogant bastard woman. As the saying goes, enemies are particularly jealous when they meet. Aokiriza has a deep impression of Seireitei, who has always obstructed the progress of her relationship with Senju Makoto in the past. Looking at Aokiriza, who seemed to see an enemy, Senju Makoto took the opportunity to dialectical approve his innocence and said in a low voice. Riza, don't be silly. Koyasu encountered something and finally fell asleep. Aokiriza was startled, and her sympathy flashed, but it was soon completely dispelled. Absolutely no extra compassion for Seireitei, this nasty, flat, arrogant bastard woman. What if Seireitei succeeds in taking advantage of the opportunity to lie on Makoto-kun's bed? Obviously, I'm the first friend that Makoto-kun has made in the GOTY 13, and if we want to lie down, I should lie down first. However, in order to maintain her image in front of Senju Makoto, Aokiriza hesitated and reminded. Makoto-kun, if Seireitei stays here, bad rumors may spread. Otherwise, let Seireitei rest in my tent. Senju Makoto asked with some embarrassment. This seems to be a good idea, but if so, where will you sleep, Riza? It's okay with me, just anywhere, Aokiriza said nervously. It just so happens that I have insomnia recently, so I might as well stay in Makoto-kun's tent to help Makoto-kun deal with team affairs. The next moment, Seireitei suddenly opened her eyes, looked at Aokiriza viciously, and shouted. Damn. Who wants to rest in your tent? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 166. The Place Where the Flash Steps Intersected. Senju Makoto. Looking at the Seireitei in his arms who seemed to be stinging Aokiriza to death, Senju Makoto couldn't help but be stunned. Just now, Seireitei was pretending to sleep. Feeling the doubtful eyes from Senju Makoto and the playful eyes of Aokiriza, Seireitei seemed to be poked in the place that shouldn't be poked, and her little head subconsciously shrank towards the direction of Senju Makoto's arms, but the next moment, Seireitei realized that her action seemed to be weak, and then looked at Aokiriza with an angry look and said. Even in a dream, your annoying voice is still so clearly transmitted. Aokiriza responded unyieldingly. You're welcome. Even if you were a pediatric patient, it's still a little early to go to bed at this time. Pediatrics. Seireitei's eyes almost instantly became angry, and she wanted to tear this damn idiot girl in front of her into pieces bit by bit. Thank you so much. Next time I invite you to the second squad, shall I? I have prepared a lot of gifts for you in advance. I guarantee you will be reluctant to leave. Aokiriza's face seemed to have a gentle smile similar to Senju Makoto's, and she said. No, I have to help Makoto handle a lot of work every day. After all, Makoto has just been promoted to vice captain not long ago, and he doesn't have the leisure time to hang out in other squads like some people, so I have to be busy. Unfortunately, I also received a mission to protect Makoto tonight to prevent suspicious and ulterior motives from approaching Makoto. Suspicious? That's really a pity. Makoto knows me very well. There is nothing suspicious about me, but you, forget it. There is really nothing suspicious about you anyway, pediatrician. For a moment, in the worlds of Aokiriza and Seireitei that seemed to contain sharpness, Senju Cheng didn't even have the opportunity to interrupt. These two people, as long as they meet, there'll never be a possibility of getting along with each other. Bang bang. The next moment, Aokiriza and Seireitei were each hit on the forehead by a finger snap, and then they were all driven out of Senju Cheng's tent. Outside the tent, Aokiriza and Seireitei still looked at each other fiercely, and their sights seemed to explode with fierce flames, thinking at the same time. If it weren't for her, Cheng's time tonight would belong to me. However, because Senju Cheng was in the tent behind them, and they were also worried about affecting Senju Cheng's rest, Aokiriza and Seireitei snorted at each other and turned their heads to leave in different directions. Of course, since Seireitei's mission tonight was to protect Senju Cheng, Seireitei did not go away, but hid nearby again. Then, Seireitei carefully spread out her palm, on which was a small note. At this time tomorrow night, at the place where we met in the flash step, I will come to you. The joy on Seireitei's face flashed, and then she stuffed the small note into her arms and kept it well. Her eyes were no longer as cold and world-weary as before, but more expectant and bright. Even, Seireitei felt for the first time that a single night was so long. The next day, in the underground secret space opened up by Shioin Yorishi and Urehara Kisuke. This was originally the secret place where Shioin Yorishi and Urehara Kisuke used to train at the beginning. Due to the financial support of the Shioin family. Therefore, this underground space is not only very large, but also surrounded by a part of the murderous stone to a certain extent to isolate the overflow of spiritual pressure fluctuations, and it is actually equipped with various facilities and supplies, and even a small hot spring. Before, when Senju Cheng accepted the flash step training from Shioin Yorishi, it was here that he fought with Seireitei, who was used as a sparring partner, for quite a long time. Originally, Seireitei was determined not to step into this place again in her life. However, under the invitation of Makoto Senju, Seireitei suddenly realized that she seemed to no longer be extremely repulsive to this place. After all, this place is not only the memory of herself and Yorishi Shioin, but also the memory of Makoto. When Makoto Senju finished all the team affairs and hurried to the underground space, she rarely changed her secret mobile team uniform and put on a regular uniform. The cute Seireitei was already training her own instant step. This scene also surprised Makoto Senju. Could it be that Seireitei has already noticed Yorishi's last traces here as I expected, and understood something, so she cheered up again? The thought flashed through Makoto Senju's mind, and this was also the reason why Makoto Senju invited Seireitei to this place. Because of the friendship between the two sides, it was difficult for Makoto Senju to ignore Seireitei. What's more, Io has the potential to reach the captain level of combat power. The sooner she reaches that level, the more benefits Makoto Senju will naturally get from the seeds left in her. As the saying goes, you can't kill all the fish in the pond. On the contrary, Makoto Senju supports the continuous improvement of the strength of every Shinigami who has integrated the seeds of the forest. In this way, the spiritual power benefits absorbed by Makoto Senju will be higher. Therefore, the hollowification event planned by Aizen Sosaf actually became the biggest beneficiary in a sense. Otherwise, it would be quite rare for Makoto Senju to find an opportunity to integrate the seeds of the forest for so many captain-level Shinigami. The only regret is that the former captain of the 7th Division, Akawara, the cheerful uncle with a big hair, was unfortunately killed by Unohana teacher with a knife. Otherwise the seeds of the forest would have another excellent host. In addition, in the soul burial ceremony of Ikawaramu held not long ago, Makoto Senju attended as the representative of the 4th Division, and the sadness he showed was even stronger than that of the former members of the 7th Division. It was precisely because of this that the members of the 7th Division, who had originally complained about the 4th Division, looked at Makoto Senju with kindness. Makoto Senju, this man, must also be deeply guilty and regretful for the sacrifice of Captain Ikawaramu. When Seireitei noticed the arrival of Makoto Senju, her figure floated in front of Makoto Senju in an instant, and her expression seemed a little unnatural. Good evening, Makoto-kun. In response to Seireitei, Makoto Senju's gentle smile seemed to have never changed, and it was like a spring breeze that relaxed Seireitei's somewhat nervous mood. I'm sorry, Cosway, please come here, but there are some things I think it's better to talk about. The matter of Master Yorishi. Makoto Senju was trying his best to choose his words to avoid irritating Seireitei. Seireitei shook her head gently, looked at Senju Makoto with burning eyes, and said, Makoto-kun, that kind of thing, I don't care about it anymore. Chapter 167 Black Cat. Senju Makutō. This development and reaction, why does it seem a little wrong? Senju Makutō expected that Seireitei might react violently and interrupt the next words. Or maybe she had already understood the whereabouts of Shiwu and Yorishi through the traces in the underground space, and said that she already understood everything. But, it doesn't matter, what the hell is this? Senju Makutō showed a trace of astonishment, looking at Seireitei in confusion. This overturned all the mental preparations that Senju Makutō had prepared in advance. And Seireitei wanted to say something, but the words seemed to stop at her lips, and turned her head slightly, saying a little unnaturally, "Mr. Makutō, how about not talking about Shiwu and Yorishi? Let's practice instant step. Just like in the past." Okay, Senju Makutō agreed in confusion. However, one thing seems to be certain. Seireitei seems to have really come out of the psychological shadow of being abandoned by Shiwu and Yorishi. But, this speed is too fast, right? In the original trajectory, Seireitei had been brooding over this matter for hundreds of years, and had been suppressing it until the day she met Yorishi Shirin again, when she completely burst out her inner loneliness and sadness. So, how did Seireitei quickly come out of the emptiness of losing something important? Did she find something else to replace it? However, before Makutō Senju could think carefully, Seireitei's petite body had already pressed towards Makutō Senju again, and kicked Makutō Senju's chest with a mid-air kick. Makutō Senju blocked it with his arms, and before Seireitei's dense, stormy attack could be fully launched, his figure also retreated violently, and disappeared in an instant. For a while, in the entire huge underground space, Makutō Senju and Seireitei could be said to be chasing each other, advancing and retreating, and the attacks they launched were sometimes violent and sometimes fast. Moreover, because the attainments of both parties' instant steps were constantly improving under this kind of sparring, the traces left by the two in the entire underground space could be said to be increasing. As the night deepened, until both sides' physical energy was exhausted to a certain extent, the long-lost Shunpo training between Makutō Senju and Seireitei came to an end. Seeing Seireitei's back, who seemed to be in a completely happy mood, Makutō Senju couldn't help but smile. Although he didn't quite understand Seireitei's inner thoughts, which were almost childish, the result seemed to be good. In addition, Makutō Senju found that Seireitei's Shunpo and Bakutō attainments seemed to have improved a lot during this period of time. In contrast, Shunpo training with Seireitei also improved Makutō Senju's Shunpo and Bakutō levels. This kind of sparring that is almost completely suitable for Makutō Senju's current situation can be said to be unique in Soul Society. Makutō Senju looked at the time and was about to return to the 4th Division as usual. Suddenly, he noticed the hot spring in the corner of the training ground. Makutō Senju has a particularly deep memory of this hot spring. According to what Shiwu and Yorishi boasted, this hot spring was imitated by Urahara suit based on a hot spring with extremely strong healing effects in the 0th Division. It not only has the effect of promoting the healing of injuries and restoring spiritual power, but also benefits the spirit body. In the original trajectory, Ichigo Kurosaki also soaked in this hot spring to heal his injuries. Before, when Yorishi Shifunjin was still alive, Yorishi Shifunjin occasionally teased Makutō Senju to take a hot spring bath with her, but how could Makutō Senju fall for such a trick? It is entirely conceivable that once Makutō Senju really soaks in it, Yorishi Shifunjin has a 49% chance of directly taking Makutō Senju's clothes, a 49% chance of taking a hot spring bath with Makutō Senju and then threatening Makutō Senju with this matter. There is also a 2% chance that Yorishi Shifunjin may do something even more terrible to Makutō Senju that is unimaginable and indescribable. Therefore, Makutō Senju has firmly refused in the past, but it does not mean that Makutō Senju has no curiosity about the hot spring. Come to think of it, it seems that I haven't soaked in a hot spring for a long time. It doesn't seem right to relax a little. Anyway, there's no one there. A moment later, Senju Makutō, with a white towel on his head, half lying in the hot spring in the underground space, closed his eyes and enjoyed the familiar and comfortable feeling. For a moment, Senju Makutō felt that all the pores on his body seemed to be dilated, and there was indeed something similar to spiritual power in the hot spring, which slowly merged into Senju Makutō's body along the pores. Of course, although Senju Makutō almost ignored this level of gain, the feeling of being wrapped in warmth and the pores dilating wantonly was comfortable. Senju Makutō let out a long breath, feeling that the fatigue of this period of time seemed to be slowly released. At this moment, Senju Makoto's mind almost couldn't help but have an idea. I must ask Omida Kiyoshi to arrange and find a way to build a private hot spring in Unohana teacher's courtyard. Who knows, maybe one day that teacher will invite me to soak in the hot spring together. The scene was so beautiful that a smile spread across the corners of Senju Makoto's mouth, and his spirit gradually relaxed completely. Suddenly, meow. Where did the sound come from? Senju Makoto slowly opened his eyes, and in front of him, he was surprised to see a black cat floating on the hot spring water, squinting lazily and looking into Senju Makoto's eyes. The black short hair was shiny black, the bronze round eyes, the torso was muscular, the limbs were strong and powerful, and the inside of the ears was still the unique purple color that was the same as Shifu Yuan Orishi. Then, meow, the black cat gently fiddled with its forelegs gracefully, and approached Senju Makoto directly, and gently pressed its claws on Senju Makoto's chest, making a deep bass voice. Mr. Makoto, guess who I am? At this moment, Senju Makoto tilted his head back slightly, and just wanted to die. There was only one black cat in the original trajectory that could speak human language and had a deep male voice. That was Shifu Yuan Orishi. What's more, as Senju Makoto regained consciousness, he had clearly and actively sensed the seed of the forest that had merged into Shifu Yuan Orishi's body. But, what should I do now? For a moment, Senju Makoto felt that he was not soaking in a hot spring, but in magma. When did Shifu Yuan Orishi, this bastard, sneak back from the real world, and just change his form and run around like this? Recognize or not? What scares Senju Makoto the most is that no matter whether he recognizes it or not, with Shifu Yuan Orishi's bad personality obsessed with teasing, there is a great probability that he will show his true face. You know, in the black cat state, Shifu Yuan Orishi will be naked even if he restores his human body and spirit body. Chapter 168. The cat was Supnam. What is certain is that once the news of him and Shifu Yuan Orishi taking a hot spring bath together spread to Unohana teacher, Senju Makoto almost instinctively shuddered. More importantly, Shifu Yuan Orishi might take a selfie and record the scene. Subconsciously, Senju Makoto had the idea of covering his face with a towel and running away from the hot spring. Anyway, even if Shifu Yuan Orishi kept some photos, as long as his face was not shown in them, Senju Makoto could deny it. Senju Makoto didn't believe that Unohana teacher would take off her clothes bit by bit to compare with the various features in the pictures. Gurgle just when Senju Makoto was ready for this, he forgot that Shifu Yuan Orishi was almost at the strongest level of the Seireitei above Shunpo and Heikatachi. Perhaps, in the microscopic world of spirit particles inside the spirit body, Shifu Yuan Orishi was far inferior to Senju Makoto, but Shifu Yuan Orishi knew the function of every muscle of the spirit body like the back of his hand. Therefore, when Senju Makoto's spirit subconsciously tensed slightly, Shifu Yuan Orishi noticed Senju Makoto's intention and spoke in surprise. You want to escape? Eh? Makoto, you haven't seen through my identity, have you? Ah, hectares. Senju Makoto leaned back slightly, leaning against the edge of the hot spring, as far away from Shifu Yuan Orishi as possible, and said with a bit of surprise on his face. Where did this talking cat come from? It's amazing, isn't it? Amazing. The black cat that Shifu Yuan Orishi transformed into narrowed its eyes, pressed both paws on Senju Makoto's chest, and said with a playful tone. I see, Makoto, how about I show you something more amazing? Senju Makoto. At this moment, Senju Makoto had already anticipated Shifu Yuan Orishi's next move. No matter what, she must not be held in Shifu Yuan Orishi's hand, and she must not be restored to human form, otherwise, there will be endless troubles. Senju Makoto thought of this, and he became ruthless. He grabbed the black cat's front paw with both hands and lifted it up. His eyes seemed to reveal full of curiosity, and he said, What a cute cat, wow, it's okay to suck a little bit, right? Immediately, in the shocked eyes of Shifu Yuan Orishi, Senju Makoto buried his face in the black cat's abdomen, and then sucked it madly. Shifu Yuan Orishi. At this moment, for Shifu Yuan Orishi who had not yet reacted, the feeling was strange, wonderful. You know, Shifu Yuan Orishi transformed into the black cat form with the help of a divine artifact collected by the Shifu Yuan family. The essence is to temporarily change his own spirit particles into this special structure and form. In this way, Shifen Yuan Orishi can achieve perfect camouflage and avoid the leakage of his own spiritual pressure fluctuations and spirit particle traces. In other words, Shifen Yuan Orishi's body at this moment felt as if his entire chest and abdomen were completely sucked in an instant. Even if Shifen Yuan Orishi's usual style is generous, and she has a bad character who likes to tease others and has a nudity fetish, but at this moment, her eyes began to blur and become distracted, and Senju Cheng directly sucked the cat with a skill, posture and action like Senju Cheng, sucking it to his heart's content, and then he relaxed a little. At this moment, Shifen Yuan Orishi's whole person seemed to be anesthetized, her pupils were distracted and lifeless, and her pink tongue was weakly sticking out and tilted to the side. It seems, it's done, Senju Cheng was happy in his heart. In this case, no matter how bad Shifen Yuan Orishi's personality is, it is impossible for her to turn into a human form in front of him, right? But, just to be safe, Senju Cheng's bad thoughts flashed through his mind, and then they quickly took root and sprouted as if he couldn't stop it. Come to think of it, this cat feels so smooth and shiny, how come it speaks in a male voice? Senju said doubtfully, while placing the black cat that Orishi Shirin transformed into on the water, and then began to pry Orishi Shirin's hind legs apart little by little. Let me see if this is a little male cat or a little female cat. Well, if it's a wild cat, it shouldn't be sterilized yet, right? Otherwise, I'd better sterilize this cute cat by the way, so that it won't be defiled by other coquettish and cheap cats. In an instant, as Senju's words reached Orishi Shirin's ears, and she felt her hind legs being slowly pried apart in a humiliating posture. Stop it, bastard! Orishi Shirin suddenly shuddered, and quickly broke away from control with a flash step far beyond Senju's level, and then landed on Senju's shoulder, biting down with a mouthful of sharp teeth without hesitation. Ah! However, even so, Shifen Yuan Orishi, who still felt that it was not enough, swung his claws and left a residual shadow, scratching large patches of patterns on Senju Cheng's back. There is no doubt that this is definitely revenge. Revenge for Senju Cheng's unauthorized cat-sucking behavior, so he scratched Senju Cheng's back almost to pieces. Cat, no, I was wrong. In the midst of Senju Cheng's repeated pleas for mercy, Shifen Yuan Orishi stopped reluctantly. Senju Cheng lay on the edge of the hot spring, pretending to be miserable and sucking in the cold air repeatedly, while asking in a daze. Come to think of it, who is Mao Mao and I? If I had seen such a cute and beautiful cat before, I would not have forgotten it. When Shifen Yuan Orishi heard Senju Cheng's preemptive words, he felt that he had been completely dishonored by this bastard, and he could not announce him. HMPH. Pervert, you actually sucked a cat like this, Shifen Yuan Orishi said viciously, and then disappeared from the spot with an elegant step. Seeing this, Senju Cheng really breathed a sigh of relief, and his half-lifted heart was truly put down. Being bitten and having your back scratched is better than leaving such a terrible handle for Shifen Yuan Orishi. However, just when Senju Cheng gave up the idea of continuing to soak in the hot spring and was about to get up and leave, Shifen Yuan Orishi, who had transformed into a black cat, quickly rushed towards the direction of the hot spring with a residual shadow and fell into the pool. Don't expose my existence, or you will suffer the consequences, Shirin Orishi threatened, and then actually sneaked under Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng. Then, Senju Cheng's eyes suddenly looked in one direction. Seireitei actually returned to the entrance of the underground space. Chapter 169. It's simply a monster. According to the location of the forest seed, Senju Cheng clearly determined that Seireitei was at the entrance of this underground space, and quickly turned back in his direction. Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng looked down at his own state. Apart from staring at a white towel on his head, there was really nothing extra. This, Senju Cheng subconsciously regarded Seireitei as a half-grown girl based on Seireitei's body shape. If Seireitei saw him like this, wouldn't that image collapse in Seireitei's heart? Then, Senju Cheng almost instinctively wanted to get up. Now, it's still time to put on clothes. However, Senju Cheng had just started to move when he felt his thighs being pressed firmly into the hot spring by two claws. Senju Cheng looked down and saw that in the hot spring pool, he could vaguely see the black cat hiding under him and the eyes full of warnings and, with a bit of inexplicable shyness. Wait, Senju Cheng's eyes also subconsciously widened to the extreme. This black cat is Orishi Shirin, but now Orishi Shirin is almost in the position of Senju stunned for a moment, and a certain stimulation made his brain pale. And Yorishi Shiuin, who was hiding under the hot spring pool, saw the feeling of loss of composure on Makoto Senju for the first time, and the cat face actually showed a smirk in a very anthropomorphic way. When Makoto Senju came to his senses, Seireitei had already appeared at the end of his sight. Obviously, it was impossible to leave this hot spring pool at this moment. Damn, Makoto Senju's heart was full of grass mud horses, and he quickly picked up the white towel on his head and pressed it towards the hot spring pool, covering some places that children should not look directly at, and the black cat. Seireitei, who was anxious in the distance, almost noticed Makoto Senju, the only source of spiritual pressure in the entire underground space. Looking at Makoto Senju's seemingly embarrassed expression and half of his body exposed above the hot spring, Seireitei's expression was also frozen. It must be said that when Senju Makoto usually wears his Shinigami costume, his figure looks like a refined and slender type similar to Aizen Sasuke, with no muscle protrusion at all. However, at this moment, Seireitei also clearly saw that the muscle contours of Senju Makoto's spirit body were full of a kind of streamlined beauty, restrained and containing a certain power. Seireitei stopped almost instantly, and her originally anxious face became more hesitant and shy. She didn't dare to approach Senju Makoto, but in her heart she inexplicably wanted to get closer. More importantly, seeing Makoto at this moment, Seireitei didn't know what to say at all. However, Seireitei recalled the familiar black shadow that seemed to have flashed in her sight just now. In the end, Seireitei still appeared in front of Senju Makoto, her eyes tried to wander to one side, and she asked with a ruddy face. Makoto, I'm sorry, I disturbed you. And Senju Makoto was also extremely embarrassed, and didn't know what to answer at all. Say it's okay? How does that make her look like a girl playing a hooligan? It's obviously not appropriate. Or just like answering have you eaten? Invite Seireitei to go down to the hot spring pool and eat a big bowl of fine food. More importantly, this pool is big enough to accommodate more than 10 people, but it is also small, and I'm afraid it can't accommodate Senju Makoto, Shifu Yuan Yorishi and Seireitei at the same time. In the end, Senju Makoto's mouth twitched, ignoring the shadow of Yulu's Hio on the other side, who seemed to be eating melons and watching the show, and forced a smile and asked, "Is there anything?" "Then Seireitei asked with a stuttering voice. "Makoto-kun, have you ever seen a black cat?" Black cat?" Senju Makoto asked. Seireitei, who seemed to have remembered something, seemed to have forgotten the surrounding environment for a moment, stared directly at Senju Makoto, and said with a bit of gritted teeth, "Yes, that black cat looks very much like the form that the woman Yorishi Shifen had transformed into before. I seem to see it running in this direction just now." Immediately, Makoto Senju realized why Yorishi Shifen was hiding under him in a panic. Yorishi Shifen's bad form must have secretly teased Seireitei in the form of a black cat before, and even secretly did something back to Seireitei. Therefore, Seireitei is quite familiar with Yorishi Shifen's black cat form. As for why Yorishi Shifen didn't want Seireitei to notice her existence at this moment, Makoto Senju didn't know what Yorishi Shifen was thinking. However, at this moment, the black cat was under Makoto Senju's crotch. Even if Makoto Senju was unwilling in his heart, he would never expose the existence of Yorishi Shifen. Otherwise, there would be no way to prove his innocence. "No, I was just taking a hot spring bath here and didn't see anything," Makoto Senju replied. "Really?" Upon hearing this, Seireitei, with her ability cultivated over the years in stealth maneuvers, naturally noticed the unnaturalness and stiffness in Senju Makoto's tone. More importantly, Seireitei knew very well that she had indeed seen the black cat that was suspected to be the incarnation of Yorishi Shifen. If it wasn't Senju Makoto who said this, Seireitei would have instinctively concluded that Senju Makoto was lying. Of course, I actually hate cats the most. They are very curious, like to scratch everywhere with their claws, and sometimes bite people. They are nothing but cute. Senju Makoto paused and suddenly took a breath of cold air. At the same time, the white towel that Senju Makoto was pressing on his thigh moved almost suddenly. Seireitei also subconsciously looked at the white towel that moved. Looking at the huge arched area, the whole towel was forcibly propped up from the middle. For a moment, Seireitei, who thought of something, almost instantly turned red on her cheeks. How could it be so powerful? It's simply a monster. Although in Senju Makoto's eyes, Seireitei is still an innocent girl. However, as she is in a secret mobile team that mainly performs assassination, espionage, surveillance and other tasks, Seireitei actually knows all these very well. In fact, it was Yorishi Shifen who held her in his arms and taught her these common sense little by pointing at the picture books and molds. But at this moment, Seireitei feels that her worldview has been greatly impacted. Horror, so terrifying. This is definitely beyond common sense, right? Seireitei tried to think and compare in shock, but she suddenly felt that she was in a state where she could not think and compare. Chapter 170 The Ultimate Rich Woman. Sensing the change in Seireitei's expression, Senju Cheng felt ashamed, angry and guilty. Seireitei was just an ignorant girl. If he left a shadow on Seireitei, how could Seireitei get along with others in the future? Feng, it's getting late. You should go back soon, right? Senju Cheng reminded Seireitei in embarrassment. Seireitei turned around quickly after hearing what she said. In the glimpse just now, Seireitei saw clearly not only the offering, but also other things hidden under the hot spring pool. And in the entire underground space, except for Senju Cheng's spiritual pressure fluctuation, there was no spiritual pressure reaction in other places. In other words, did I see it wrong? Or is there another hidden exit in this underground space that I don't know about? Seireitei tried hard to immerse herself in thinking and not recall the shocking scene. However, Seireitei felt that the scene was becoming clearer and deeper. In her mind, she completely restored the charming spirit of Makoto-kun with almost only imagination. Makoto-kun, sorry to bother you. Well, leave first, Seireitei stammered, and then left as quickly as if she was running for her life, and completely disappeared at the entrance of the underground space. Watching Seireitei leave, Senju Cheng also fell down on the edge of the hot spring as if his strength was drained. Too humiliating. Mainly because of Seireitei's girlish figure, the innocent and mature Senju Cheng didn't even have the slightest thought of committing a crime, and only had the feeling of shame and guilt. Seireitei left, Senju Cheng said weakly, hinting that Shiryu and Yorishi should get out as well. As expected, you can't just soak in a wild hot spring, it's too torturous. Senju Cheng sighed in his heart, and suddenly felt that the black cat between his legs seemed to be rapidly growing larger, heavier, and slippery. The next moment, a head of smooth purple hair, playful golden eyes, and wheat-colored skin that seemed full of temptation and health emerged from the hot spring. Yorishi Shiryu. Moreover, she actually recovered her normal spirit state directly under this situation. More importantly, the posture of both parties at this moment was very wrong, which made Senju Cheng's eyes blurry and blank for a moment. Sure enough, Shiryu and Yorishi licked her lips, staring at Senju Cheng's flushed and out-of-control face playfully, and said, Makoto-kun, you already knew that the black cat was me, right? So and Seireitei said it just now, you were not even a little surprised. Yorishi, Lady Yorishi, although Senju Cheng had seen countless female spirits in gynecology, in this scene, facing such a charming Shiryu and Yorishi, Senju Cheng was still completely embarrassed. Master Yorishi, can you come down first? Oh? But Yorishi Shiryu didn't seem to care at all, and even moved closer to Makoto Senju, blowing hot air into his ear and saying, What? You were so comfortable sucking the cat just now. Don't you want to suck the cat now? Come, suck it. However, the next moment, in a situation that Yorishi Shiryu had not expected at all, Makoto Senju suddenly lifted Yorishi Shiryu and threw her over his shoulder in a very standard way, smashing her heavily on the ground behind him. Boom. With Yorishi Shiryu as the center, a small spiderweb-like crack even appeared on the ground. Then, without waiting for Yorishi Shiryu to react, Makoto Senju sprinted out of the hot spring, grabbed the Shinigami and zanpakutō that were neatly placed on the edge, put them on himself in a panic, and quickly ran straight to the entrance of the underground space. When Shiryu and Yorishi came to her senses, Senju Cheng's spiritual pressure fluctuations had already escaped from the underground space. Puff Shiryu and Yorishi, who was lying on the ground, suddenly laughed, then stretched out her hand and seemed to gesture something in front of her eyes, and said with a satisfied laugh, Ha ha ha, as expected, Makoto-kun is really a little newbie who can't stand being teased, so cute. On the other side, Senju Makoto, who had left the underground space, couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, and then carefully sorted out his clothes. In any case, Shiryu and Yorishi would not really show up and catch up within the GOTY 13 for the time being. I almost couldn't help it. At this point, Senju Makoto still felt a little blood boiling. It was not until the cool night breeze of the Seireitei that he felt gradually calmed down. At this moment, Senju Cheng also deeply understood how big the gap was between himself and an old driver like Shiwen Yorishi. If he had really let the situation develop, Senju Cheng was sure that he would be even more embarrassed. As for what really happened, Senju Cheng knew very well that it was basically impossible to happen. Shiwen Yorishi, the former head of the Shiwen family, one of the four nobles standing at the top of Seoul society, had a status that was unimaginable to ordinary people. The power, wealth, and status she possessed were far beyond the reach of ordinary captain-level Shinigami, but she was destined to have all of this almost from birth. Even when Shiwen Yorishi broke into the central 46th room, which symbolized the highest institution in Seoul society, and forcibly robbed Shinigami such as Uehara Kisuke, the central 46th room did not dare to list Shiwen Yorishi as a criminal and pursue her, which shows how respected her status was. The price that the Shiwen family paid for this was that Shiwen Yorishi passed the position of the head of the family to Shiwen Yushiro, one hand to the other, or even Shiwen Yorishi just wanted to get rid of the responsibility and take the opportunity to play in the real world. Therefore, Shiwen Yorishi, who had everything since birth, may have gained a lot, but she also lost all her worries. This led to Shiwen Yorishi, who had everything, gradually feeling bored and boring in her long life, so she liked the fun of teasing others. Senju Cheng naturally didn't want to be a toy that Shiwen Yorishi was happy to swing. Even if Shiwen Yorishi was definitely the richest woman in the entire Seoul society. But if the price of getting Shiwen Yorishi was to lose freedom, dignity, and Unohana Retsu, thinking of this, Senju Cheng shuddered. What Byakuya said was true. Shiwen Yorishi was indeed a demon cat. I was almost ruined by this demon cat. No, I must go to the central 46th room tomorrow to visit Unohana-sensei and stabilize my religious faith. By the way, I can also hint at the preparations for building a hot spring. Senju Cheng thought secretly, and his pace back to the 4th division couldn't help but quicken a bit. Chapter 171 Shunhong's training. However, Senju Cheng suddenly noticed a black shadow approaching at an incredible speed. In just a moment, the black shadow landed on Senju Cheng's shoulder and lay on his shoulder in a lazy posture. 4. Shifen Yuan Yorishi black cat form. Senju Cheng's mouth twitched, and he was completely numb. Shifen Yuan Yorishi licked his paws, then pressed his paws on Senju Cheng's cheeks, pushed his face back, and spoke in a low male voice. Don't look at me like that, just treat me as an ordinary cat. Why? Master Yorishi, do you have any other instructions? Senju Cheng asked helplessly. I came back to Jinglington to find you this time, and there are indeed two things I need your help with. Shifen Yuan Yorishi said. Hearing Shifen Yuan Yorishi's seemingly serious tone, Senju Cheng relaxed a lot and said. Master Yorishi, please speak. Shifen Yuan Yorishi narrowed his eyes and said. First, help me keep an eye on Aizen Sasuke. He may be dangerous and may be the mastermind behind the holoification incident. Of course, you don't need to investigate specifically. Just keep an eye on him. Besides, Cheng is a little weak. Try not to attract Aizen Sasuke's attention. Senju Cheng was a little surprised that Uehara Kisuke and Shiwen Yorishi had locked their suspicions on Aizen Sasuke so quickly. On the surface, he responded with a submissive look. Moreover, this is undoubtedly a good thing for Senju Cheng. At least, if Senju Cheng intends to use Uehara Kisuke and Shiwen Yorishi to deal with Aizen Sasuke in the future, it will not be too abrupt. Shiwen Yorishi was not surprised at all by Senju Cheng's agreement. At least, in Shiwen Yorishi's view of this moment, Senju Cheng is definitely a trustworthy and reliable person. Second, I was a little worried about Seireitei's condition. She couldn't accept this kind of thing in a short period of time, and she might even have some extreme thoughts. After a pause, Shiwen Yorishi stared at Senju Cheng with her golden eyes and said. But now it seems that what you did has helped Seireitei recover her spirit very well. Senju Cheng smiled and continued. I can't help it. Seireitei is also my friend. I can't just watch Seireitei and ignore her. That's right, Cheng is a gentle person. I feel more relieved when Cheng takes care of Seireitei, Shiwen Yorishi said with a sigh, and then said. By the way, I left a copy of the perfected Shunhong training method next to the hot spring. Please help me find a way to give it to Seireitei, but don't tell her that it was developed by me, lest she'd be unwilling to practice it. Shunhong. Senju Cheng looked at Shiwen Yorishi in surprise. That's right. In the black cat form, Shiwen Yorishi seemed to have more cat instincts. As she spoke, she subconsciously licked her paws again and said, "I have introduced it to you once before. It is a fighting technique that combines Hakuta and Kitten. It is very powerful and is not inferior to the power of Bankai." After a pause, Shiguin Yorishi continued. "If Makao is also interested in Shunhong, you can also try to practice it. Anyway, with Makao's Kido and medical skills, there is no need to worry about any major problems with the spirit body." "I understand." Senju Makao nodded without pretending to be polite. Shunhong, this fighting technique created by Shiguin Yorishi is quite valuable and has considerable appeal to Senju Makao. "Well, I'll leave these things to you. If there is any emergency and you need to contact me, just tell Omida Nozomi." Then, Shiguin Yorishi said, and jumped directly from Senju Makao's shoulder to the nearest eaves. Under the night sky, Shiguin Yorishi, who turned into a black cat, showed an elegant and calm posture, and even looked like a painting. I have to admit that at least in the eyes of Senju Makao, who likes cats very much, Shiguin Yorishi who turned into a black cat is much more pleasing to the eye than her original spirit body. After all, who can refuse a beautiful and elegant cat that can speak human language? If this black cat is not called Shiguin Yorishi, Senju Makao will definitely try to trap this kind of cat. "Goodbye, Makao, come to the world to play with me when you have time. Life in the world is much more interesting than that in the Seireitei." As Shiguin Yorishi raised her forelimbs and waved at Senju Makao, she disappeared without a trace in an instant. That super instant step called Sunshine, even in black cat form, it is still not something that Senju Makao can tell a movement trajectory of. However, this time, Senju Makao wisely did not rashly complain about Shiguin Yorishi behind her back, but closed his eyes and focused on feeling the movement direction of the forest seed in Shiguin Yorishi's body. Finally, until the forest seed stopped at the Shiguin family courtyard, it completely lost the sense. It seems, Shiguin Yorishi has passed through the Shiguin family's gate to the real world, Senju Makao silently judged. After tonight's experience, he completely understood Kachika Byakuya's feelings. Shiguin Yorishi is indeed a demon cat. Humph, sooner or later, I will rub all the cat's hair on her body clean, Senju Makao thought secretly, but his footsteps suddenly turned back to the direction of the underground space. Instant home. In the following days, without Shiguin Yorishi's disturbance, Senju Makao's life gradually got back on track. The 4th Division's dormitories and the courtyard that was carefully improved by Senju Makao and more suitable for Unohana teacher to live in were completed one after another, and the 4th Division finally got rid of the embarrassment of having to live in temporary tents collectively. And because Kotetsuya assisted in handling the review and Aokiriza in the execution, Senju Makao actually did not spend much time on the management of the 4th Division. Therefore, Senju Makao took advantage of the time when Unohana Retsu had not returned to the 4th Division, and sneaked into the underground space almost every night to practice instant step and instant buzz with Seireitei. Of course, it was different from Seireitei, who seemed to have been trained by Shiguin Yorishi in advance and quickly mastered the entry of instant buzz. Senju Makao, who fully understood the principle of instant buzz, could only wander back and forth at the door, but could not get in for a long time. In the final analysis, Senju Makao has been a god of death for a short time, and his energy is mainly focused on Kido, medical skills and instant step. As a result, Makao Senju's Hakuto, Kitten, and Zanjutsu were all quite average, and he could not meet the basic requirements of practicing Shunhong. As time passed quickly, Makao Senju and Seireitei, who sneaked out every night, had not made any real progress in the development of Shunhong, and the day had come for the real master of the 4th Division, Unohana Retsuji, to return to the division. Chapter 172 Unohana Retsu's Return. Central Room 46, Main Entrance. Under the respectful gaze of several guards, Unohana Retsu, wearing only a Shinigami uniform, walked out slowly with an elegant and gentle manner. The next moment, the warm sunlight shone on Unohana Retsu. Although the living environment of Unohana Retsu in Central Room 46 was quite good, the scope of activities was still inevitably restricted. This made Unohana Retsu squint his eyes subconsciously, and his mood improved a little. However, what surprised Unohana Retsu was that there was no one outside the main entrance. Not only Senju Makao, but also the other members of the 4th Division did not show up, as if they had forgotten that today was the day for her to return to the 4th Division. Unohana Retsu's expression, which originally had a little expectation, sank slightly, and his eyes looked around, and then walked back to the direction of the 4th Division's barracks without haste. That's right. Makao was promoted to vice captain. He has more things to do and pay attention to. It's normal and understandable that he forgot such a small time. Hanaretsu's expression was still so gentle and elegant, but his eyes were faintly dangerous, and his smile was slowly expanding. But it has been a month since I taught him in person. Maybe Makao needs a little training soon. As Hanaretsu approached the main gate of the 4th Division's barracks, the first thing that came into view was a tall gatehouse and a row of neatly arranged new barracks. Makao, you have done a pretty good job in the past month, Hanaretsu commented softly. After all, Hanaretsu could clearly remember how the 4th Division's barracks looked like before. In just 1 month, Makao Senju was able to complete the repair work of the barracks to this extent, which was already a pretty good achievement. However, what made Hanaretsu frown was that at this moment, the main gate of the 4th Division's barracks was not only not guarded by a Shinigami, but was even closed. Hanaretsu suddenly sensed something, and then slowly pushed open the main door of the 4th Division's barracks. The next moment, the scene inside the 4th Division's barracks rushed towards Hanaretsu. I saw countless petals that Hanaretsu usually liked slowly falling in front of Hanaretsu's eyes. A large number of members of the 4th Division lined up neatly in front of Hanaretsu, and they all wore a white pure flower on the chest of their black dead suits. Then, Makao Senju, who was standing at the front of the team, walked in front of Hanaretsu at the 4th Division's captain's Aori in both hands, and spoke with tenderness and joy on his face. "Teacher, you are finally back." After saying that, Makao Senju shook the Aori in his hand, and then put his hands around to help Hanaretsu put it behind his back. Hanaretsu raised his head slightly, looking at Makao Senju in front of him, who seemed to be unable to help showing tenderness and joy when looking at him, and his eyes curved like a crescent moon, and said softly, "Vice Captain Senju, I thought you forgot that today is the day I returned to the 4th Division." "How could that be?" Senju Makao said with his eyes slightly downcast. "Every day that Hana-sensei is not in the 4th Division seems like a year to me, and every minute and every second is counting down to the arrival of the 1-month period promised by the Captain General. In fact, in order to make time pass a little faster, in addition to visiting Hana-sensei, I can only numb myself by constantly working, so that I can try not to think of Hana-sensei." Hanaretsu's smile seemed to be more gentle, and he did not comment on what Senju Makao said. After helping Hanaretsu put on the Aori, Senju Makao consciously stood on the left side behind Hanaretsu, almost perfectly in the most appropriate position for a vice captain. This is the experience that Senju Makao asked Seireitei's one vice captain Nomita Kiyoshin for advice on how to stand so that the captain can feel your presence at any time, but not so that the captain will feel that he is hindering himself. It must be said that Senju Makao thinks that Nomita Kiyoshi is the strongest in this regard. It would be a waste of talent if he didn't publish this book and leave a good reputation for generations. As Hanaretsu appeared in front of many Shinigami wearing the captain's Aori, a voice that seemed to have been agreed upon in advance also echoed in the 4th Division's dormitory. "Captain Hana, welcome back." This neat and passionate voice made Hanaretsu's gentle eyes flash with waves. During this period of time, there was another important reason why Hanaretsu deliberately stayed in the central 46th room. That was that Hanaretsu drew his sword under the gaze of a large number of 4th Division Shinigami. Under the spiritual pressure that represented the killing, Hanaretsu knew very well what kind of deterrence and influence it might have on ordinary Shinigami. Therefore, Hanaretsu had originally prepared himself to be feared by the 4th Division members. However, at this moment, in the eyes of Hanaretsu and the eyes of many 4th Division Shinigami, he still saw respect and admiration. Then, under the welcome of many Squad 4 Shinigami, Hanaretsu attended a grand banquet prepared in advance. As the night deepened, as the rest of the Squad 4 members dispersed, Hanaretsu and Senju Makao went towards the courtyard. Along the way, Senju Makao looked at Hanaretsu's beautiful and gentle profile from the corner of his eyes from time to time. The moonlight sprinkled on Hanaretsu's face, and for a moment he didn't know whether the moonlight was more gentle or Hanaretsu was more gentle. If Hanaretsu could occasionally change his posture and action when he drew his sword and turned into a blood moon to stab his throat, it would be more perfect in Senju Makao's eyes. Of course, Senju Makao did not regret facing Aizen Sasuke and Hanaretsu rashly at the time. In any case, whether it is usual caution or hiding, for Senju Makao, it is ultimately for the purpose of being able to have more strength and less risk when trying to do what he wants. Suddenly, as if sensing Senju Makoto's gaze, Yuna Hanaretsu's eyes seemed to slightly turn to the other side, and then he said softly, "Thank you, Makoto." At this point, Yuna Hanaretsu had clearly understood that all of this was arranged by Senju Makoto. The Shinigami in the 4th Division were not without fear of Yuna Hanaretsu, but Senju Makoto had often provided psychological counseling for these Shinigami during this period of time. Some, more serious ones, Senju Makoto deliberately arranged those Shinigami to be on duty today, and not allowed to appear at Yuna Hanaretsu's welcome ceremony. "Teacher, what are you talking about? Isn't it my job?" Senju Makoto answered gently. Yuna Hanaretsu heard this, and the smile on his face became a little brighter. Until, Yuna Hanaretsu pushed open the gate of the courtyard and saw the large hot spring that occupied a corner of the courtyard, and his smile froze. "Makoto, is this what you should do? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 173. Is this what you should do? Makoto, is this what you should do? Yuna Hanaretsu turned to Senju Makoto and asked with a somewhat stiff smile. "Are you going to take a hot spring bath in my courtyard by yourself, or are you going to let me take a hot spring bath in front of you?" Senju Makoto subconsciously took a step back and waved his hands in front of his chest to indicate. When he was about to explain something, Yuna Hanaretsu narrowed his eyes and asked, "Oh, are you going to take a hot spring bath with the teacher?" Senju Makoto swallowed his saliva and explained quickly. "Teacher, please listen to my quibbling. No, let me explain. This hot spring has a very good effect on spirits." Right, yes, and I'm also worried that the teacher is too tired at ordinary times, and the hot spring can effectively relieve fatigue. Don't worry, teacher, if you want to take a hot spring bath, I will definitely stay nearby in person. Not to mention a death god, even a male fly or mosquito can't get in." Yuna Hanaretsu's expression suddenly glowed with a gentle smile again, and said, "How can I bother you, Makoto? It's okay. If something runs into me while I'm soaking in the hot spring, I'll chop it off myself." "Hectares," Makoto Senju responded to Yuna Hanaretsu with a stiff smile, but he felt a chill all over his body. Yuna Hanaretsu then stood at the door, looking at Makoto Senju with a gentle and calm gaze, and said, "Vice Captain Senju, thank you for sending me back. You've worked hard today. Go back and have a good rest. I need to take you to the captain's meeting tomorrow. Don't be late." Then, without waiting for Makoto Senju to speak, Yuna Hanaretsu closed the door and left Makoto Senju outside. A gust of cold wind blew by. "Teacher, my room is also in the courtyard," but Makoto Senju didn't have time to say this sentence. At this moment, Makoto Senju felt that this familiar and damn scene seemed to have happened once before. Then, what should he do in this long night? Senju Makoto stared at the crescent moon, and his mind flashed through one destination after another. However, Senju Makoto is now the vice captain in the 4th Division. He couldn't say that he had nowhere to go after being kicked out by the captain. "How about I go back to the vice captain's house for one night? Last time I was kicked out, Vice Captain Yamada refused to let me stay at his house for one night, claiming that his wife would definitely not agree, but this time I'm going back to my own house, and Yamada also said that she didn't mind such a thing. Of course, this idea is just a thought. Even if Senju Makoto himself is not afraid of his own shadow, he is still worried about affecting Yamada-Rinka's reputation. As for the other familiar people in the 4th Division, Iokiriza and Kotetsu, they also live alone. Senju Makoto is also worried that staying overnight will cause them some trouble. After all, Senju Makoto is now the vice captain. Once he takes the initiative to ask for something, it will inevitably be stigmatized by his position, and then it will turn into workplace bullying. This means that even if they refuse in their hearts, they can only agree on the surface. In the end, Senju Makoto thought for a few breaths and quietly went to the direction of the underground space, where he could practice and kill time, and there was also a place to sleep. After closing the door, Yuna Hanaretsu looked at the hot spring built in a corner of the courtyard, and a hint of redness appeared on his originally gentle and elegant face. Then, Yuna Hanaretsu glanced around the courtyard, which seemed to have a restoration degree of more than 90% in the environment and layout except for the hot spring. He knew in his heart that this was probably the work of Senju Makoto. After all, Hanaretsu had lived in this courtyard for nearly 1,000 years, and it was inevitable that there were various arrangements and styles that Hanaretsu liked. Perhaps only Senju Cheng, who had lived in this courtyard for a year, could perfectly reproduce it, and this was enough to show that Senju Cheng was usually a very careful and detail-oriented person. However, when Hanaretsu simply walked around the courtyard, he was surprised to find that next to his master bedroom, a room different from the guest room had been expanded. Suddenly, Hanaretsu realized that this might be what Senju Cheng prepared for him. "Cheng, are you really going to stay with me?" Hanaretsu hesitated for a long time, but still did not destroy the room full of Senju Cheng's favorite style. Instead, he slowly closed the door and returned to his master bedroom. The layout and style of the master bedroom were almost unchanged, which made Hanaretsu subconsciously feel familiar. However, when Hanaretsu entered this room, his eyes were subconsciously attracted by the forest and wetness placed in the center of the cabinet. Suddenly, Hanaretsu's face subconsciously revealed a hint of joy. Originally, Hanaretsu thought that this precious flower arrangement had been destroyed and buried with the ruins of the courtyard, but he did not expect it to be perfectly preserved. Hanaretsu hurried forward, picked up the forest and water lily, and admired it carefully. Compared with his memory, there was no change at all. The flower guarded in the center was not damaged at all, and the green grass growing around it was still full of vitality. Everything was still the same as it was at the beginning. Hanaretsu gently stroked the green grass on the forest and water lily, with a smile on his face, and said, "For the sake of this gift, I will let you continue to stay." The next day, when Hanaretsu got up in the familiar environment of the courtyard, he felt a sense of peace from the bottom of his heart, and then when he finished washing up, he felt that Senju Cheng's spiritual pressure appeared almost precisely at the door. Hanaretsu opened the door, looked at Senju Cheng in front of him, and said softly, "Come in, have breakfast together." "Thank you, teacher." Then, Hanaretsu and Senju Cheng had breakfast together for the first time in a long time. It was only a month, but both Hanaretsu and Senju Cheng had a long-lost feeling. It was as if the companionship they were used to suddenly became lonely. At this moment, both Hanaretsu and Senju Cheng could clearly feel that the two sides seemed to have become closer. Perhaps, this was because both sides saw the other side of the other side. This time, Hanaretsu and Senju Cheng did not speak, but quietly enjoyed the feeling of each other's presence, and once again felt the long-lost sense of companionship. For a moment, Senju Cheng deeply understood a sentence. A person is lonely all his life, but as long as he is accompanied by the soul once, he will never forget it for the rest of his life. Chapter 174 The Decline of the GOTY 13. Afterwards, Hanaretsu led Senju Cheng to the direction of the First Division, walking along the road at an unhurried pace, and reminded Senju Cheng of the various points that needed to be paid attention to in the captain's meeting. Captain's meeting. There is no doubt that this is a meeting in the Seireitei with specifications and levels second only to the central 46th chamber meeting. On the surface, it is a meeting that all captains and vice-captains of the entire GOTY 13 division need to attend. Of course, in fact, only the captains actually enter the meeting to make decisions, while the vice-captains stay in the adjutant waiting room, responsible for providing assistance to the captains or executing temporary tasks. In short, in the eyes of the real senior officials of the Seireitei, most of the vice-captains are just little keramic. So Senju Cheng only needs to stay in the adjutant waiting room to drink tea and chat, and don't argue or even fight with other adjutants, which will affect the normal progress of the captain's meeting. In addition, Hanaretsu also mentioned it a little bit, so that Cheng Senju would pay a little more attention to the adjutant of the First Division, Chojiro Suzuki. If he wanted to listen to the warning given by the rigid Chojiro Suzuki, he could listen to it a little bit. When he heard this, Cheng Senju's expression couldn't help but become a little more weird. So, could it be that Hana teacher meant, if you don't want to listen, you can ignore it, but you must not wrong yourself. If something really happens, the teacher will help you to save the situation. As for the other vice-captains, Hanaretsu with a gentle expression didn't even mean to mention it at all. Then, Cheng Senju stepped into the gate of the First Division, the highest-ranking division in the GOTY 13, amid the respectful eyes of the members of the First Division for Retsu Hana. Then, Hanaretsu walked to the main door of the meeting room, pointed to the door in the other direction, and said gently, "Cheng, that's the adjutant waiting room. Go ahead and treat it as a place to make friends. I'll call you when the meeting is over." "Okay, teacher." Senju Cheng smacked his lips, feeling that Unohana Retsu seemed too gentle today, as if he had completely forgotten the existence of the hot spring, and walked into the adjutant waiting room. Unlike the imagined crowd of talents, there were only a few figures in the adjutant waiting room at the moment. The adjutant waiting room, which was not spacious to begin with, had a slightly more empty feeling. "Makoto, you're here." The next moment, a gentle voice sounded, and Aizen Sosok, wearing black-framed glasses, took the initiative to greet Senju Makoto with a smile. "Vice Captain Aizen, it's been a long time." Senju Makoto responded politely, making the relationship between the two seem just right, neither far nor close. "Yeah, it's been so long since we last met, I didn't expect that Makoto-kun would become the vice captain so soon." Aizen Sosok said with a hint of meaning, and then took the initiative to introduce the vice captains present to Senju Makoto. Obviously, with his gentle and elegant, humble and approachable expression management, Aizen Sosok has a very good popularity in the GOTY 13th Division. The 1st Division's captain, Suzuki Chojiro, the 2nd Division's Omida Kishin, the 3rd Division's Shoten Sensu, the 6th Division's Kachiki Sojin, the 7th Division's Kotsubaku Hajin. When the captains and vice-captains of the 11th Division collectively did not attend the meeting, in addition to Senju Makoto and Aizen Sosok, there were only 5 vice-captains present. Alas, thinking back to the meeting a month ago, the waiting room was still quite lively. Konamashiro and Saragahizari were full of energy. "I didn't expect," Aizen Sosok said with a sigh, and his words revealed a lot of sadness. This made Senju Makoto couldn't help but glance at Aizen Sosok. Where did those vice-captains go? Why did they become like this? Is there anyone in the entire Seireitei who knows better than you, Aizen Sosok? Of course, Senju Makoto complained in his heart, and on the surface he also showed a look of regret and sadness. His expression was low, and his lips were slightly pursed, and he said, "Those seniors, I'm really sorry. It happened in the 4th Division, but the 4th Division was unable to save them. I am ashamed." For a moment, under the infectious expressions of Aizen Sosok and Senju Makoto, the aura of the entire adjutant waiting room became more and more depressed and gloomy. Bang! Suddenly, the vice-captain of the 3rd Division, Shiba Sentetsu, slammed the table. The body that was obviously a woman but had a body and muscles that were not inferior to Roguru Makensei shook, and said with an extremely angry expression, "That damn Urahara Kisuke, if I know where he is hiding, I will tear this bastard to pieces. Although Lujura has always been a sissy, he is still my captain. How dare he kill him like this? Vice-captain of the shooting range, don't be angry. The Captain General and the Central 46th Officer are already doing their best to hunt down Urahara Kisuke." Kotsubaku Yaman persuaded him. However, Shooting Range Sensu's expression became more and more angry, and he spit at Kotsubaku Yaman. "How can I not be angry? Now that Lujura, that sissy, is gone, all the team affairs have fallen on my head. I've been almost annoyed for a while. I have to take care of the children and deal with the team affairs. How can I handle it? Why doesn't the Captain-in-Chief quickly assign a new captain to the 3rd Division? Are you planning to persecute a female Shinigami like me? Besides, I'm different from you. Do you need to give birth to a child or take care of a child? It's just dealing with some team affairs." For a moment, the appearance of Shibakaitsu's wife of the accuser made Senju Makoto subconsciously take a step back, fearing that she would be stared at and scolded by Shibakaitsu. Too scary, when thinking of Fenchikau Lujura's calm and elegant appearance in front of outsiders like a Western aristocrat, and the possible embarrassment when facing Shibakaitsu, Senju Makoto couldn't help but feel a little sympathy. Wait, if Senju Makoto remembers correctly, the next captain of the 3rd Division in the original trajectory seems to be Ichimura Jin. Suddenly, Senju Makoto's eyebrows raised, and he actually had a little more expectation in his heart. Then, Senju Makoto deliberately kept a certain distance from Aizen Sosok, and after communicating with Omida Kishin and Kachiki Sojin for a while, the captain's meeting was announced to be over. In this regard, Senju Makoto naturally would not really stay in the adjutant's waiting room waiting for Unohana teacher to come, but took the initiative to wait for the captains to come out outside the main door of the conference room with other vice-captains. However, the number of captains who came out of the conference room was even more scarce. Unohana Retsu, Kachiki Jinrin, Kakushansui, excluding Zaraku Kinpachi who skipped the meeting, and Jikita Joshiro who was sick and unable to attend the meeting, there were only 3 captains. For a while, Senju Makoto even had a feeling that the GOTY 13 was going to decline and wither. However, Senju Makoto seemed to see a hint of joy and anxiety on the faces of the 3 captains. What happened? Chapter 175 Policy. On the way back to the 4th Division's barracks, Yuna Hanaretsu looked at Senju Makatao softly and asked, "Makatao, what do you think of this first captain's meeting?" "It's a little different from what I imagined," Senju answered honestly. "For example?" Yuna Hanaretsu asked. "It's more casual, free, and disorderly than I imagined." Of course, this is still Senju Makatao's deliberately restrained evaluation. Not to mention that Kinpachi Zaraki and Yarai Kusaka of the 11th Division are simply not able to play, and Yukita Joshiro is also absent on sick leave for many years. In addition, many divisions with vacant captains and vice-captains do not even need to send a representative to the scene. This all illustrates a fact. That is, the decision-making power of the GOTY 13 Division is actually only in the hands of the 1st Division and the Central 46th Office, and the rest of the divisions are more of an executive position. In this so-called captain's meeting, how much say in decision-making power the other participating captains have is undoubtedly a question. In addition, the status and power of the captain and those below the captain are even more obviously different. The distribution of the power pyramid of the entire Soul Society, the Seireitei, and the GOTY 13 is clear at a glance. Yuna Hanaretsu heard this and replied softly, "There is nothing we can do about it. After all, no matter who participates in this kind of meeting thousands of times, they will feel tired." After a pause, Yuna Hanaretsu glanced at the empty corridor and spoke slowly. In fact, the so-called captain's meeting is essentially just a way for the Captain General to check and balance the nobles. Only through the decisions made by the captain-level Shinigami can the Central 46 and a large number of nobles treat them carefully. Yuna Hanaretsu's gentle eyes have a little more special meaning, as if muttering to himself. The Captain General really has a lot more compassion than before. Is he feeling guilty about the Soul Society and has begun to tolerate the nobles again and again? This sentence clearly floated into Senju Makatao's ears, and when he looked at Yuna Hanaretsu again, Yuna Hanaretsu's eyes returned to their usual gentleness, as if the different meaning in his eyes just now was just an illusion, and he said with a smile, "Mr. Makatao, do you want to know what the content of this captain's meeting is?" "Teacher, can you tell me this?" Senju Makatao asked. "Of course, you are my most important adjutant. Moreover, even if this matter will not be widely circulated among the GOTY 13, the top leaders of each division will definitely know about it one after another." Yuna Hanaretsu's pace was still unchanged, and he continued. During the Hollowization incident, the combat power of the captains, adjutants, and chief officers of the GOTY 13 was almost lost by more than half. Now the GOTY 13 can no longer continue to perform its usual duties, and even many nobles in the Seireitei have gradually developed a contempt for it. Therefore, making up for the lack of combat power has undoubtedly become the most urgent matter for the GOTY 13. Therefore, the captain-in-chief has made many decisions and changes. At this point, Yuna Hanaretsu paused and asked, "Makatao, are you interested in being the captain? If I personally recommend you, there should be no problem." Makatao Senju's expression froze, and he looked at Yuna Hanaretsu's expression that didn't seem fake, and countless thoughts lingered in his mind. However, the next moment, Makatao Senju revealed a gentle and brilliant smile and said, "Teacher, I'm your most important adjutant, and I have agreed to accompany you for more than 100 years no matter what. Are you going to drive me away so soon?" "Of course I don't want to, but seeing the growth of my disciples is also the romance of the teacher," Yuna Hanaretsu said. "But I only mastered the first release, and I'm afraid I can't be promoted to the position of captain." Makatao Senju evaded and replied. Yuna Hanaretsu heard this and smiled without saying anything. If Yuna Hanaretsu really thought that Makatao Senju was a disciple who was only good at Kido and medical skills before, then after experiencing the Hollowification incident, Yuna Hanaretsu knew the depth of Makatao Senju very well. Although he only mastered the Shikai, Makatao Senju's strength is definitely not inferior to that of an ordinary captain. More importantly, Yuna Hanaretsu's eyes seemed to accidentally pass over Makatao Senju's throat. It was pierced countless times, but Makatao Senju was able to repair it countless times by himself with his zanpakutō ability and Kido. This level of difficulty would definitely be extremely difficult for an ordinary captain to deal with. And Makatao Senju ignored the damage to his throat many times, and even moved the position of the lock knot by himself during the battle. Yuna Hanaretsu understood that Makatao Senju's spirit was definitely not normal, and Makatao's zanpakutō ability was definitely not as simple as it seemed. Since Makatao doesn't want to, then Makatao should continue to stay in the courtyard tonight, so that it will be convenient for me to teach Makatao when I am free. In Makoto Senju's somewhat surprised eyes, before Makoto Senju could think about how to continue to stay in the courtyard without appearing to have ulterior motives, Unohana Retsu actually took the initiative to speak. Since the teacher has invited me so kindly, as a disciple who respects teachers, I can only accept it with reluctance. Of course, on the surface, Senju Makoto still looked respectful and obediently accepted Unohana Retsu's suggestion. Then, Unohana Retsu continued to walk forward and spoke. This time, in order to quickly make up for the lack of combat power in the GOTY 13, Captain Yamamoto will expand the enrollment scope of the Shinen Spiritual Academy from this year onwards. In addition, the threshold for nobles to join the GOTY 13 will be relaxed, and even those with sufficient strength can directly serve as captains, vice-captains, etc. Captain Yamamoto will also personally teach Kendo in the Kendo Club of the Seireitei in the near future, and all those above the rank of chief officer can accept instruction. Unohana Retsu carefully explained one policy after another, and almost every one of them would undoubtedly help supplement the combat power of the GOTY 13. Obviously, Captain Yamamoto was really anxious about the current situation of the GOTY 13. At the end, Unohana Retsu paused slightly and said, "And the most interesting thing is that Captain General Yamamoto encourages members of each team to go to Rukongei on their own to search for people with Shinigami talent, and they can directly recommend them to study at Mao Spiritual Academy. Also, the team to which the recommended Shinigami belong will have the priority right of selection when they graduate, and the other teams are not allowed to raise any objections." Upon hearing this, Senju Makoto's expression showed some surprise for the first time. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.